When a paralyzed crime lord rises from his wheelchair to expose the brother who tried to murder him, he discovers something more dangerous than betrayal. A quiet maid who sees past his power and forces him to choose between an empire built on fear and a future worth fighting for. If you're ready for a story of revenge, deception, and unexpected redemption, stay until the end. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The black Mercedes didn't scream as it went over the cliff. Adrian Varese noticed that in the half-second before impact. The strange quiet of it, like the world holding its breath. Then came the crunch of metal against rock, the spray of shattered glass catching moonlight, and the cold shock of seawater flooding the cabin. His seatbelt held him suspended as the car flipped, rolled, sank. Through the spiderwebbed windshield, he could see the surface receding, moonlight fragmenting into nothing. His ribs felt wrong, crushed inward. His legs wouldn't move when he told them to. The water was so cold it burned. Adrian Varese had built an empire by never panicking. Even now, drowning in the darkness off Highway 1, he kept his breathing controlled, counted the seconds, waited for the airbag to deflate enough that he could reach the seatbelt release with fingers that barely responded to his brain's commands. The belt gave. He pushed through the broken window, tasting blood and brine. His legs dragged uselessly behind him as he clawed toward the surface, each stroke weaker than the last. The ocean wanted to keep him. For a moment, he almost let it. Then his head broke the surface, and he sucked in air that felt like swallowing glass. The cliff face loomed above him, jagged and indifferent. Waves pushed him toward the rocks. He couldn't feel his legs at all anymore, couldn't tell if they were broken or just numb or gone entirely. His vision kept blurring, sharpening, blurring again. He didn't remember much after that. The impact against the rocks, someone shouting, hands pulling him from the water, rough and hurried. The back of a van, not an ambulance. A voice he almost recognized saying, "Get him out of here, now." When he finally surfaced to consciousness 3 days later in a hospital bed that wasn't in any hospital, the first thing he saw was his physician's face. Dr. Reeves looked like he hadn't slept since the accident. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted an IV line. "How bad?" Adrian's voice came out scraped raw. Reeves hesitated. That told Adrian everything he needed to know before the man even spoke. 3 fractured ribs, punctured lung, severe spinal trauma. Reeves met his eyes. "You'll live, Mr. Varese, but you won't walk again." The room went very quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped steadily. Adrian stared at the ceiling tiles and did the math. The meeting with the Hong Kong distributors scheduled for next week. The territorial dispute with the Kozlov family that required his physical presence to settle. The wedding to Isabella Crane set for 3 months from now. More political alliance than romance, but necessary nonetheless. All of it required a man who could stand. "Who knows?" Adrian asked. "Only myself and the 2 men who pulled you out. The ones you keep on retainer for situations like this." "Good." Adrian's mind was already moving, cataloging, planning. "Keep it that way. As far as anyone else is concerned, I'm recovering in a private facility. Minor injuries. I'll be back in a week." Reeves looked at him with something between admiration and horror. "Mr. Varese, you need to understand what I'm telling you. The damage to your spine—" "I understand perfectly." Adrian shifted slightly, testing the pain. His ribs screamed. His legs remained silent, absent, useless. "I'm asking how long I can maintain the appearance of recovery before people start asking questions I can't answer." The doctor worked his jaw, considering. "A month, maybe, if you're careful. After that, people will expect to see you walking, standing. You can't fake that indefinitely." "A month is enough." It had to be. The thing about running a criminal empire was that showing weakness got you killed. Not dramatically, not with speeches and dramatic confrontations. You just stopped receiving the calls that mattered, stopped being invited to the meetings where real decisions got made. Your lieutenants started looking past you when they talked, already picturing your replacement. And then one morning you'd be dead in a way that looked like an accident, and the empire would move on without you. Adrian had watched it happen to others. He'd made it happen to others. He knew the rules. So for the first week he stayed hidden in the private facility, a converted warehouse in the industrial district that Reeves used for situations requiring discretion. Adrian made calls from the hospital bed, his voice steady, giving orders and receiving reports as if nothing had changed. He approved shipments, settled disputes, authorized payments, business as usual. But he also started asking questions. Careful questions, threaded through conversations like tripwires. Who knew I was taking Highway 1 that night? Which mechanic serviced the Mercedes last? Who's been asking about me since the accident? The answers came back slowly, piece by piece, painting a picture he'd been avoiding for months. His brother's name appeared too many times to be coincidence. Lucien Verrez, 3 years younger, twice as ambitious, always standing in Adrian's shadow and hating every second of it. Lucien, who'd been pushing for more territory, more control, more voice in how the empire ran. Lucien, who'd been having very quiet meetings with some of Adrian's key distributors. Lucien, whose girlfriend worked at the luxury car dealership where Adrian got the Mercedes serviced. Adrian lay in the hospital bed, staring at the evidence his people compiled, and felt something cold and familiar settle in his chest. Not rage. Rage was hot and stupid and got you killed. This was colder, cleaner. Lucien wanted him gone, had probably already started positioning himself as the natural successor. Was likely spreading careful rumors right now about Adrian's injuries being worse than reported, planting seeds of doubt about whether the great Adrian Verrez would ever truly recover. The smart play would be to eliminate the threat immediately. One word to the right people and Lucien would disappear, his body found in a way that sent a message to anyone else considering betrayal. But Adrian didn't give the order. Instead, he started making different plans. On day 9, Adrian went home. The mansion sat on 3 acres overlooking the Pacific, all glass and steel and money. He'd bought it 5 years ago, back when he still cared about things like views and architecture. Now, it just felt like a very expensive cage. The van pulled into the underground garage. The 2 men who'd saved him from the ocean, Marcus and Jin, loyal because Adrian paid them to be loyal, and because they were smart enough to know which side of his organization was the winning side, carefully transferred him to a wheelchair. Custom made, delivered that morning. Black carbon fiber and chrome, because if Adrian Verrez was going to be bound to a chair, it would at least be a chair that looked like it cost more than most people's cars. "Ready, boss?" Marcus asked. Adrian gripped the wheels, testing. His upper body still worked fine. His arms were strong from years of boxing and the occasional necessity of personal violence. He could do this. "Let's get it over with." They took the private elevator up to the main floor. Adrian had called ahead, told his household staff he was returning, wanted everything to appear normal. The elevator doors opened, and there she was. Isabella Crane stood in the foyer wearing a cream silk blouse and diamond earrings that caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was beautiful in that specific way wealthy people managed. Perfect skin, perfect hair, perfect posture. They'd been engaged for 8 months, the marriage designed to merge his criminal network with her family's legitimate business empire, a practical arrangement that benefited both parties. Her face when she saw the wheelchair went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, horror, concern. The concern settled last, but Adrian had seen what came before it. "Adrian." She moved toward him, heels clicking on marble. "Oh my God, I thought they said you were fine, that it was just minor injuries." "Complications," Adrian said evenly. "The doctors are optimistic about recovery, but it's going to take time." Isabella knelt beside the wheelchair, taking his hand in both of hers. Her skin was soft and cool. Her eyes were wet, but no tears actually fell. She'd always been good at controlling her appearance. "I was so worried," she said. "When I heard about the accident, I can't imagine what you went through. I'm alive. That's what matters." She studied his face, searching for something. Adrian kept his expression neutral, pleasant, tired in the way someone recently traumatized would be tired. He'd practiced in the mirror that morning. "How long?" Isabella asked quietly. "Until you can walk again?" "They don't know. Could be weeks, could be months." He squeezed her hand gently. "I know this isn't what you signed up for." "Don't say that." Her voice had the right amount of firmness, of loyalty. "We're in this together. For better or worse, right? That's what marriage means." They weren't married yet. Interesting that she'd phrase it that way. "I appreciate that," Adrian said. "More than you know." Isabella stood, smoothing her blouse. "You should rest. I'll have Maria prepare your room. Is there anything you need?" "Just some time to adjust." She nodded, leaned down to kiss his forehead, a gesture that felt more maternal than romantic, and walked away. Adrian watched her go, noting the way her shoulders relaxed once she thought she was out of sight. The way she pulled out her phone before she even left the room, already texting someone. Marcus appeared at his shoulder. "You want us to check the phone records?" "Already being done," Adrian said quietly, "along with everything else. Because if Lucian was moving against him, he wouldn't be doing it alone. His brother was ambitious, but not stupid. He'd need allies, co-conspirators, people inside Adrian's own organization who'd decided the paralyzed king wasn't worth following anymore. People like Isabella. The thought settled in Adrian's mind with grim certainty. He wheeled himself toward the library, Marcus following at a respectful distance. The mansion suddenly felt larger, emptier, full of shadows and questions. In the library, Adrian positioned himself by the window, overlooking the ocean, the same ocean that had almost killed him. The same cliff his car had gone over. He could see the skid marks from here if he looked hard enough, black scars on the coastal highway. Someone had cut his brake lines. He was sure of it now. The car had been serviced 2 days before the accident at the dealership where Lucian's girlfriend worked. The brakes had failed on a curve Adrian had driven 1,000 times, at exactly the moment when failure meant certain death. Not an accident, an execution. Except he'd survived. And now he had a choice. Strike back immediately or wait. Watch. Let his enemies think they'd won. Let them expose themselves completely and then take everything. Adrian had built his empire on patience and ruthlessness in equal measure. This situation called for both. A knock on the library door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." The door opened and a young woman entered, someone Adrian didn't immediately recognize. She wore simple clothes, dark pants and a white button-up shirt, and carried a tray with tea and what looked like medication. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry. She moved with quiet efficiency. Not the practiced grace of household staff who'd been trained to be invisible, but the natural economy of motion that came from hard work. She set the tray on the side table next to his wheelchair, glanced at him briefly, then started to leave. "Wait," Adrian said. "Who are you?" The woman turned back, meeting his eyes directly. That alone was unusual. Most people who worked for him had learned to look slightly past him, deferential and careful. "Lena Chen," she said. Her voice was soft but clear, accented with something that suggested English wasn't her first language. "Dr. Reeves hired me. I'm supposed to help with your care while you recover." "I have staff." "Yes, sir. But Dr. Reeves thought you might want someone with actual medical training. I'm a certified nursing assistant." She paused. "If you don't want me here, I can leave." Adrian studied her. She couldn't be more than 25, maybe younger. There was something honest in her face, an openness that seemed almost dangerous in his world. People who worked for Adrian Varese learned to lie, to hide, to present carefully curated versions of themselves. This woman just looked tired. "Why did you take this job?" he asked. Lena blinked at the question. "I need the money. I'm saving for nursing school. Dr. Reeves said this position pays well and I'd have time to study between shifts." No flattery, no elaborate explanation, just the simple truth delivered without calculation. How refreshing, how foolish. "You know who I am?" Adrian asked. "You're Adrian Varese." She said his name the way she might say any name, without weight or judgment. "Dr. Reeves told me you value privacy and discretion. That's fine with me. I'm not here to ask questions or get involved in your business. I'm just here to help you recover." "And if I don't recover?" Lena looked at him with something that might have been sympathy, but felt more like simple acknowledgement. "Then I'll help you adapt. Either way, you're still a person who needs care. That's my job." She said it so matter-of-factly, without pity or condescension, that Adrian found himself almost smiling. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like he was just a person? Not a king, not a threat, not a useful connection or dangerous enemy. Just a man in a wheelchair who needed help. "All right, Lena Chen, you can stay." She nodded once, professional, and moved to pick up the tray again. "The tea's chamomile," she said. "Supposed to help with stress and pain management. The pills are what Dr. Reeves prescribed for inflammation. You should take them with food." She paused at the door. "I'll be in the East Wing if you need anything. There's a call button on your chair." Then she was gone, leaving Adrian alone with his tea and his thoughts. He looked down at the pills, considered them for a moment, then dumped them in the trash. He needed his mind sharp, not dulled by painkillers. The physical discomfort he could handle. He'd handled worse. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Phone records pulled. Isabella's been in contact with Lucien. Daily calls, some lasting an hour or more. Adrian set the phone down and looked out at the ocean. The sun was starting to set, painting the water in shades of orange and red. Blood colors. So Isabella was in on it, his fiancé and his brother working together to take everything he'd built. The betrayal should have hurt more than it did. Maybe he'd suspected all along. Maybe he'd just never cared enough about Isabella to feel genuinely wounded by her treachery. The empire, though, his life's work, that was different. Another text. Lucian's been meeting with your distribution heads. 3 confirmed so far. He's positioning himself as interim leader while you recover. Interim. That was almost funny. As if Lucien planned to give control back once Adrian was healthy again. Except Adrian wouldn't be healthy again. Wouldn't walk again. Wouldn't stand again. Wouldn't physically command a room the way he had for the last decade. And in his world, physical presence mattered. Strength mattered. A king who couldn't stand was no king at all, unless he made them believe otherwise. Adrian picked up his phone and started making calls. The next 2 weeks established a rhythm. Mornings, Adrian took calls in the library, managing his empire from the wheelchair. He made sure everyone saw him working, thinking, commanding. He didn't hide the wheelchair, but he didn't draw attention to it either. Just conducted business as if nothing fundamental had changed. His people responded with careful courtesy and barely concealed doubt. Afternoons, he submitted to physical therapy sessions with Lena. She'd arrive at 2 o'clock precisely, set up her equipment, and put him through exercises designed to maintain his upper body strength and prevent muscle atrophy in his useless legs. She worked with quiet competence, neither chatty nor cold. Sometimes she explained what she was doing and why. Sometimes they worked in silence. She never asked about his business, never commented on the armed men who stood guard outside, never reacted when she overheard phone conversations about shipments and territories and making examples of people. She just did her job. "You're not curious?" Adrian asked one afternoon during a particularly grueling set of resistance exercises. Lena glanced at him while adjusting the tension band. "About what?" "Any of it, what I do. Why men with guns stand outside my door. Why my fiancée visits for exactly 20 minutes each evening and spends the entire time on her phone." "Not really my business. Most people would be curious. Most people would also be scared." Lena met his eyes. "Are you asking if I'm scared of you, Mr. Verrace?" Adrian considered the question. "Are you?" "No." She said it simply, the way she said everything. "You've been polite to me. You pay on time. You don't make inappropriate comments or demands. By those standards, you're actually one of my better employers." She paused. "Should I be scared?" "Probably," Adrian said honestly. Lena shrugged, continuing the exercise. "Well, I'm not. Maybe I'm stupid. Or maybe I just think that if you wanted to hurt me, you'd have done it already." She counted his reps quietly. 14, 15, 16. Good. 2 more sets. Adrian found himself looking forward to these sessions. Not because they were pleasant, they weren't. His muscles burned and his broken body protested every movement. But because Lena treated him like a person. Not a king, not a cripple, just a patient who needed to maintain his strength. The rest of the household had started looking at him differently. He could see it in their eyes, the careful way they spoke to him, always asking if he needed help, if he was comfortable, if there was anything they could do. Pity wrapped in professional courtesy. Lena never pitied him. She just worked him hard, expected him to keep up, and didn't accept excuses. It was almost insulting. It was perfect. Evenings, Isabella would visit. She'd sweep into the library at 7 o'clock, kiss his cheek, ask about his day in a voice that suggested she didn't really want details. Then she'd sit in the chair across from him, sipping wine, checking her phone, maintaining the appearance of devoted fiancée while her attention was clearly elsewhere. On the 10th day of this routine, Adrian decided to test something. "I've been thinking about the wedding," he said. Isabella looked up from her phone, surprise flickering across her perfect features. "What about it?" "Maybe we should postpone, given the circumstances." "Postpone?" She set her wine glass down carefully. "For how long?" "Until I can walk you down the aisle properly. It seems wrong to do it from a wheelchair. Isabella's face did something complicated, relief and concern fighting for dominance. Adrian, I don't care about that. We can make adjustments. Use a ramp instead of stairs. Modify the ceremony. You'd be fine marrying a man who can't stand for his own wedding? I'd be fine marrying you, she said, and she almost sounded like she meant it. However, that needs to happen. Adrian watched her carefully. The doctors say recovery could take a year, maybe longer. Now the relief won. Isabella tried to hide it, but Adrian had spent his life reading people's micro-expressions, the tiny tells that revealed what they really thought. Then we wait a year, Isabella said. I'm not going anywhere. Liar. That means a lot, Adrian said softly. Thank you. She smiled, picked up her phone again. 5 minutes later, she excused herself, citing an early morning meeting. Adrian watched her leave, then checked the tracking software Marcus had installed on her phone. She went straight to Lucian's apartment. The surveillance photos came through an hour later. Isabella entering the building. Lights turning on in Lucian's penthouse. Shadows moving behind curtains. They stayed that way until morning. Adrian studied the images with detached interest. His fiancée and his brother. How predictable. How boring. He'd expected better from both of them. But predictable was useful. Predictable meant he could plan for their moves, stay 3 steps ahead, let them think they were winning right up until the moment he took everything. His phone rang. Marcus. We've got movement, Marcus said without preamble. Lucian's calling a meeting tomorrow night. Your key distributors, 3 of your lieutenants, and some of the Kozlov family representatives. What's the meeting about? Officially, discussing contingency plans while you recover? Marcus paused. Unofficially? Word is he's planning to present himself as permanent replacement. He's going to argue that your injuries have compromised your ability to lead effectively. There it was. The move Adrian had been waiting for. Who's attending? Marcus rattled off names. 8 people total. Half of Adrian's inner circle, the half that apparently thought Lucian was a safer bet than a paralyzed king. Any of our people going to be in that room? Jin's on the security detail. He'll record everything. Good. Let it happen. Don't interfere. Boss, let it happen, Adrian repeated. I want to know exactly who's betraying me. Let them all show their faces. He could hear Marcus's reluctance through the phone. If Lucian consolidates power tomorrow, it's going to be a lot harder to take it back. He won't consolidate anything. He'll make promises and tell lies and convince people he's the future. But he won't have real power. Not yet. Adrian wheeled himself to the window, looking out at the dark ocean. Power isn't given in meetings, Marcus. It's taken. And I'm not done taking yet. After Marcus hung up, Adrian sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking. Tomorrow night, his brother would make his play. Would stand in front of Adrian's people and argue that the empire needed new leadership. Would probably invoke Adrian's wheelchair, his injuries, his inability to physically command respect the way he used to. And some of them would agree. Would nod along, convinced that strength meant standing, that power required working legs. Let them believe it. Let them commit fully to Lucian's vision of the future. And then Adrian would show them what power actually meant. A soft knock on the library door interrupted his planning. Come in. Lena entered, carrying a tray with soup and bread. You missed dinner, she said. Maria asked me to bring something up. I'm not hungry. You need to eat. She set the tray down with a firmness that suggested this wasn't a request. Dr. Reeves said you've lost 8 pounds since the accident. That's not good for recovery. There's not going to be a recovery, Lena. We both know that. She looked at him steadily. Then you need to eat to maintain the strength you have. Either way, not eating is stupid. Adrian almost laughed. When was the last time someone had called him stupid? You're very direct. You pay me to help you, not to lie to you. Lena picked up the soup spoon, held it out. You can feed yourself or I can do it. Your choice. I'm not a child. Then stop acting like one. Adrian took the spoon, more amused than offended. He ate mechanically, not tasting anything, while Lena straightened his medication bottles and made notes on her patient chart. Can I ask you something? Adrian said after a few minutes. Sure. Why nursing? There are easier ways to make money. Lena paused in her note-taking. My mother was sick for 3 years before she died. Cancer. The nurses who took care of her at the end were the only people who treated her like she still mattered, like she was still herself and not just a dying body. She set the chart down. I want to do that for other people. Make them feel human when everything else is trying to make them feel like less. That's why you don't pity me. I don't pity anyone, Mr. Varese. Pity's useless. Respect and good care, those actually help. Adrian set the empty soup bowl aside. You don't know me well enough to respect me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion, even though you're in constant pain. I know you push through physical therapy without complaining, even when I can see it hurts. I know you say please and thank you to staff when you don't have to. Lena met his eyes. That's enough to respect. Something twisted in Adrian's chest, unfamiliar and uncomfortable. When was the last time someone had respected him for something other than fear? When had anyone looked past the empire and the violence and seen just a man trying to maintain dignity in an undignified situation? Thank you, he said quietly. Lena nodded, gathered the tray. Get some sleep, Mr. Varese. Tomorrow's another day. She left, and Adrian sat alone in the dark library, thinking about respect and dignity and the strange young woman who saw him more clearly than anyone else in his life. Tomorrow, Lucian would try to take his empire. Tomorrow, Adrian would start taking it back. But tonight, for just a moment, he let himself be what Lena saw. Not a king, not a criminal, not a broken man in a wheelchair. Just a person trying to survive the night. The ocean crashed against the rocks below, steady and relentless. And Adrian closed his eyes and breathed through the pain until morning came. The morning broke gray and cold, fog rolling in from the Pacific thick enough to obscure the cliff edge. Adrian had been awake since 4, running scenarios in his head, anticipating every possible variation of how tonight could unfold. By the time Lena arrived for his morning session, he'd already been working for 3 hours, phone calls to Tokyo and Miami and 3 different cities in between, his empire humming along like nothing had changed. You look terrible, Lena said by way of greeting, setting down her equipment bag. Good morning to you too. She moved around to face him, studying his eyes with professional assessment. When did you sleep last? I got a few hours. Liar. She pressed 2 fingers to his wrist, checking his pulse. Your heart rate's elevated. You're running on adrenaline and coffee. That's not sustainable. I'll sleep when things settle down. Things don't settle down in your world, do they? It wasn't really a question. Lena released his wrist and started setting up resistance bands. They just shift from one crisis to another, and you keep pushing through until your body gives out. Adrian watched her work, precise and efficient. Are you always this blunt with your patients? Only the stubborn ones. She handed him a resistance band. 3 sets of 20, and drink some water. You're dehydrated. They worked through the exercises in relative silence, Lena counting reps while Adrian's mind continued mapping out the evening. Lucian's meeting was set for 8 o'clock at the Cascade, a restaurant the family owned, private room in the back. Jin would be positioned with the security detail recording everything. Marcus had people in place to monitor who arrived, who left, how long they stayed. You're distracted, Lena said, adjusting his grip on the band. Just thinking about work. Must be important work. You haven't complained once, and I know this exercise hurts your ribs. She was right. His ribs were screaming, the fractures still healing, each pull of the resistance band sending sharp complaints through his torso. He just stopped noticing somewhere around rep 40. Pain's relative, Adrian said. Pain's information. Your body telling you something's wrong. Lena stepped back, crossing her arms. Take a break. 5 minutes. I'm fine. Mr. Varese. Her voice went firm, that nurse tone that somehow carried more authority than any of his lieutenants. I'm not asking. Adrian released the band, breathing carefully through the ache. Lena handed him a water bottle and he drank, realizing only when the cold liquid hit his throat how thirsty he actually was. Better, she said, settling into the chair across from him. Now tell me what's really bothering you. What makes you think something's bothering me? You've done this long enough that I can read the signs. Elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, constant mental distraction, pushing yourself harder than necessary. She tilted her head slightly. You're preparing for something that scares you. Adrian almost laughed. When was the last time he'd been scared? Genuinely scared, not just calculating risk and managing threats, but actually afraid? The night his car went over the cliff, maybe. The moment when the water rushed in and he couldn't feel his legs and he thought, this is how it ends. I'm not scared, he said. Everyone's scared of something. Even you? Lena considered the question. I'm scared of becoming like my father. He was angry all the time, took it out on anyone close enough to hit. I'm scared I inherited that one day I'll just snap and hurt someone who doesn't deserve it. The honesty of it caught Adrian off guard. People in his world didn't admit fears, didn't expose vulnerabilities. Weakness got exploited, used against you, turned into leverage. But Lena just sat there, calm and open, like sharing this piece of herself cost nothing. Have you ever snapped? Adrian asked. Once. I was 17, working at a nursing home. One of the other aides kept harassing me, wouldn't take no for an answer. One day he cornered me in the supply closet, and I broke his nose with a bedpan. She said it matter-of-factly, no pride or shame in it. I got fired. He got stitches. I decided I needed to learn control if I was going to work with vulnerable people. Sounds like he deserved it. Maybe. But I scared myself more than I scared him. That anger, it felt too familiar. Too much like my father. Lena stood, moving back to her equipment. That's why I meditate, run, practice staying calm even when I want to break things. Because I refuse to be him. Adrian studied her, this small woman with her quiet voice and careful control, and saw something he recognized. Someone who'd looked at their worst impulses and decided to be better than them. Someone who fought themselves every day and called it discipline. You're stronger than you think, he said. Lena glanced at him, surprised. So are you, Mr. Verres. You just measure strength wrong. Before Adrian could ask what she meant, his phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Isabella just left the mansion, headed to Lucian's place again. Of course she was. I need to make a call, Adrian said. Can we finish this later? Lena nodded, already packing up her equipment. This afternoon okay? 2 o'clock, like usual? Perfect. She left without further questions, and Adrian wheeled himself back to the library. Through the windows, he could see the fog starting to burn off, pale sunlight breaking through in patches. It would be clear by tonight. Good. He wanted everyone to see clearly what happened when you betrayed Adrian Verres. His phone rang. Jin. Boss, we've got a problem. Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. What kind of problem? Lucian moved the meeting up. It's happening now, right now. He called everyone an hour ago, said it was urgent. Damn it. Adrian had expected tonight, had people in place for tonight. This changed everything. How many are there? 6 confirmed so far. Victor Kozlov just arrived. So did Chen and Rodriguez from your distribution network. And Isabella. Isabella. At a meeting about replacing him, not even pretending anymore. Are you in position? Yeah, I'm on security detail like planned, audio's running. But boss, if Lucian consolidates this today, he won't. Adrian's mind was already racing, recalculating. Just record everything. I need to know exactly what's said and who supports it. He hung up and immediately called Marcus. Get the car ready. We're going to the Cascade. What? Boss, that's insane. If you show up at Lucian's meeting, I'm not showing up at the meeting. I'm showing up at my own restaurant. There's a difference. Adrian was already moving, wheeling himself toward the bedroom. 15 minutes. Underground garage. This is a bad idea. Probably. Do it anyway. Adrian changed quickly, trading the casual clothes for a black suit that somehow still fit despite the weight loss. He checked himself in the mirror, this man in expensive fabric and a wheelchair, and felt a cold calm settle over him. This wasn't fear. This was focus. He took the elevator down to the garage where Marcus waited next to the black SUV, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Last chance to reconsider, Marcus said. Noted. Let's go. The drive into the city took 20 minutes through mid-morning traffic. Adrian spent it listening to Jin's audio feed from the restaurant, the voices crackling through the encrypted connection. Lucian's voice came through clear and confident. Appreciate you all coming on short notice, but I felt this couldn't wait. We need to address the reality of the situation. My brother's injuries are severe, life-changing, and while we all hope for his recovery, we also need to consider what's best for the family business. Adrian's still in charge, someone said. Rodriguez, maybe. One of the few who'd stayed loyal. Is he, though? That was Isabella, her voice sharp. Have any of you actually seen him since the accident? He takes calls from home, gives orders through intermediaries. When was the last time he met face-to-face with any of you? Silence on the line. She had a point, and everyone knew it. The Empire needs visible leadership, Lucian continued. Someone who can meet with our partners, handle negotiations in person, command respect. I'm not saying Adrian needs to step down permanently, but during his recovery, we need someone to act as his proxy, someone the families will actually respect. Someone like you? Viktor Kozlov's accent was thick, amused. I've been working alongside Adrian for years. I know the business inside and out, and I can stand in a room without people wondering if I'm about to fall apart. Lucian paused. I'm just being practical. Practical, Viktor repeated. Is that what you're calling this? Adrian smiled grimly. Viktor might be many things, but he wasn't stupid. He could see a power play when it was happening in front of him. The SU-5 pulled up to the Cascade's back entrance. Marcus turned in his seat. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Marcus got out, came around to help with the wheelchair. The restaurant's kitchen staff barely glanced at them as they entered through the service door. Adrian owned the place. They were used to him showing up unannounced. The fact that he was in a wheelchair now just made them avoid eye contact more deliberately. The private dining room was at the end of a long hallway, past the kitchen and the wine cellar. Adrian could hear voices as they approached. Lucian's presentation still going. Propose a temporary transfer of operational authority. I'll handle day-to-day decisions, manage relationships with our partners, represent the family in negotiations. Adrian can focus on his recovery without the stress of running everything. And when he recovers, Rodriguez again, still pushing back, then we revisit. But let's be honest about the timeline here. The doctors are saying months, maybe a year, maybe never. We can't put the Empire on hold for that long. Adrian stopped the wheelchair 10 feet from the dining room door. He could see through the frosted glass, shadows of the people inside. 8 of them, just like Jin had said. Half his inner circle, ready to hand power to his brother. Time to remind them who actually held that power. Marcus? Adrian said quietly. Open the door. Marcus hesitated for just a moment, then pushed the door open wide. The room went absolutely silent. 8 faces turned toward the doorway, expressions ranging from shock to horror to something that might have been guilt. Lucian stood at the head of the table, mid-gesture, his mouth still open on whatever he'd been about to say. Isabella sat 2 chairs down, wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. Adrian wheeled himself into the room with deliberate calm, letting them all get a good look. Yes, he was in a wheelchair. Yes, his body was broken, but his eyes were sharp, and his voice when he spoke was steady. Don't let me interrupt, Adrian said. Please, Lucian, continue. You were saying something about temporary authority? Lucian's face cycled through several emotions before settling on something between defiance and fear. Adrian, I didn't expect... We were just discussing contingency plans. Contingency plans. Adrian moved further into the room, Marcus closing the door behind them. Is that what you call plotting to take over my empire while I'm recovering from someone cutting my brake lines? The silence got heavier. Isabella's wine glass touched the table with a soft click. What are you talking about? Lucian said, but his voice had lost its confidence. The accident wasn't an accident. Someone tampered with my car, someone who knew my schedule, knew I'd be taking Highway 1 that night, knew exactly where the brakes would fail for maximum effect. Adrian looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. Someone who wanted me dead. Viktor Kozlov leaned back in his chair, watching with interest. The old Russian had seen plenty of family drama in his time, probably enjoyed watching other people's fall apart. That's a serious accusation, Lucian said carefully. It's a serious crime, murder, or attempted murder, since I survived. Adrian turned his attention to Isabella. Darling, you've been very quiet. Any thoughts on who might want me dead? Isabella's perfect composure cracked just slightly. Adrian, I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Someone cut my brake lines. Someone's been positioning themselves to take over while I'm vulnerable. Someone's been having very intimate meetings with my brother while pretending to be my devoted fiancée. The color drained from Isabella's face. Around the table, the others shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their water glasses and napkins. You're paranoid, Lucian said, but his voice shook. The accident traumatized you, I get that. But accusing your own family, is easy when the family's trying to kill me. Adrian's voice went cold. Tell me, little brother, how much did you pay the mechanic? Or did your girlfriend handle that part herself? Lucian's jaw worked. For a moment, Adrian thought he might actually confess, just break down and admit everything. But then his face hardened and he straightened his shoulders. I don't have to listen to this. You're clearly not well, Adrian. The stress of the injuries, the medication, it's affecting your judgment. My judgment is fine. My legs don't work, but my mind's perfectly clear. Adrian gestured to the people around the table. And I'm betting most of the people in this room know exactly what you've been planning. The question is whether they're stupid enough to follow through with it. Rodriguez spoke up, his voice careful. Adrian, no one's trying to replace you. We're just concerned about the business, about stability. Stability requires visible leadership, Isabella added, recovering some of her composure. Lucian has a point about that. People need to see. They'll see what I show them, Adrian cut her off. And what I'm showing you right now is that reports of my incapacity are greatly exaggerated. He let that sink in, watched them processing, recalculating. He could see the doubt creeping into their expressions. If Adrian knew about the meetings, about the phone calls, about Isabella and Lucian's arrangement, what else did he know? What else had he been watching while they thought he was weak and distracted? I think it's time for everyone to leave, Adrian said quietly. Except you, Lucian. You stay. The others couldn't get out fast enough. Rodriguez practically ran for the door. Chen and the other distributors followed quickly, not meeting anyone's eyes. Victor moved more slowly, pausing at Adrian's wheelchair. Your brother is ambitious, but not clever, Victor said in his heavy accent. You are both. This will be interesting to watch. Then he too left, leaving only Adrian, Lucian, Isabella, and Marcus still stationed by the door. Isabella, Adrian said, you should go too. Adrian, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You chose Lucian over me. That's your right. But I don't need to sit here and listen to you justify it. He looked at her directly. We're done. The engagement's over. You have until tomorrow to collect your things from the mansion. After that, anything left behind gets donated. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, Adrian noted with distant interest. Maybe she actually had cared, in her own calculating way. Adrian, get out. She left, heels clicking rapidly down the hallway, and then it was just the brothers. Lucian stood at the head of the table, hands braced on the polished wood, breathing hard. He looked younger suddenly, not the confident usurper from 5 minutes ago, but the kid brother who'd always been trying to prove himself. Say it, Adrian said. Whatever you've been holding in for years, say it now. Lucian's laugh came out bitter. What do you want me to say? That I hate you? That I've always hated living in your shadow, being the spare heir, the one nobody takes seriously because big brother Adrian has everything under control. That's a start. You want to know why I did it? Lucian pushed away from the table, pacing. Because you had the accident anyway. Because even without me cutting the brakes, you were going to crash eventually. You drive too fast, take too many risks, act like you're invincible. So yes, I helped it along. I made sure it happened on a curve where you wouldn't survive, because I'm tired of waiting for you to finally fail. There it was. The confession Adrian had needed, delivered with all the resentment of a lifetime spent second best. And Isabella? Adrian asked. That just happened. Started as strategy, her giving me information about your schedule, your plans, but then Lucian shrugged, something defiant in the gesture. She actually sees me. Not as your brother, not as the spare, just as myself. How touching. You don't get it. You've never had to work for anything. The empire handed to you, people's respect just automatic because you're Adrian Varese. I've had to fight for every scrap of recognition, every bit of responsibility, and it's still never enough. Adrian studied his brother, this angry man who'd tried to kill him out of jealousy and frustration, and felt nothing but tired disappointment. You could have just asked, Adrian said. Lucian stopped pacing. What? For more responsibility, more authority, a real partnership instead of always being the assistant. Adrian wheeled himself closer. I would have given it to you, eventually, when you proved you could handle it. Bullshit. You would have kept me under your thumb forever. Maybe, or maybe you never gave me a chance to see what you could actually do because you were too busy resenting me. Adrian looked at his brother, really looked at him. But that doesn't matter now. You tried to kill me. There's no coming back from that. Lucian's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Marcus tensed by the door, hand going to his concealed weapon. But Lucian just pulled out his phone, held it up. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. The mechanics disappeared. The girlfriend conveniently broke up with me last week. There's no evidence. You just confessed. To you, in a private room. No witnesses except your own employee. Lucian's confidence was creeping back, his lawyer's mind finding the angles. You go to the police, it's he said. And who are they going to believe? The respected businessman or the paranoid criminal making wild accusations? Adrian smiled then, cold and sharp. Lucian, who said anything about the police? His brother's face went pale. You tried to kill me, Adrian continued softly. In my world, there are consequences for that. Traditional consequences that don't involve lawyers or courts. You can't, Lucian backed up a step. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother when you cut my brake lines. Adrian, please, get out of the city, tonight. Take Isabella, take whatever money you've managed to hide away, and run as far as you can. Adrian's voice stayed level, matter of fact. Because if I see you again, if I hear you're still trying to touch any part of my empire, I won't be this generous. Lucian stood frozen, calculating, probably trying to figure out if Adrian was bluffing. He wasn't. You have 1 hour, Adrian said. After that, Marcus makes some calls, and you become a very popular target. Finally, Lucian moved. He grabbed his jacket from the chair, headed for the door, paused with his hand on the handle. You're going to die in that chair, he said quietly. Alone. Because you can't trust anyone, and you can't let anyone close. The Empire's going to eat you alive. Maybe, Adrian agreed, but I'll still be alive, which is more than you'll be if you're still here in an hour. Lucian left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Marcus moved to Adrian's side. You want me to follow him? Make sure he actually leaves? No, he'll run. He's smart enough for that at least. Adrian rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. But keep tabs on where he goes. I want to know if he tries to regroup. And Isabella? Let her go. She's not the real threat, just an opportunist who picked the wrong side. Adrian sat in the empty dining room, surrounded by the remnants of Lucian's failed coup. Half-empty wine glasses, abandoned napkins, the smell of expensive food going cold. His empire had almost been stolen today. Would have been if he'd waited even a few more hours to make his move. But he'd survived. Again. His phone buzzed. Lena. You missed your afternoon session. Everything okay? Adrian stared at the message, this small piece of normalcy in the chaos of his world, and felt something ease in his chest. Need to reschedule, he typed back. Something came up at work. Tomorrow then, and drink water. You're probably dehydrated. Despite everything, Adrian smiled. Somewhere in this city of betrayal and violence, there was one person who cared whether he drank enough water, who treated him like a person instead of a king or a target. It shouldn't matter as much as it did. Marcus, Adrian said, take me home. The drive back was quiet. Adrian watched the city pass by the windows, his empire still standing, still his, held together by fear and reputation, and the simple fact that he'd refused to die when they wanted him to. But Lucian's final words echoed in his head, about dying alone, about the empire eating him alive, about never being able to trust anyone. Maybe his brother had been right about that part. By the time they pulled into the mansion's garage, Adrian had made a decision. He couldn't keep running the empire from a wheelchair, not long term. People needed to see strength, needed to believe in his power. And right now, the wheelchair undermined that belief every single day. So he'd give them a different kind of strength, the kind that didn't require standing, the kind that came from being 10 steps ahead, from knowing everyone's secrets, from proving that his mind was more dangerous than his body had ever been. And maybe, if he was careful, he'd let himself trust one person, just one, someone who'd already seen him at his weakest and hadn't flinched. Lena was waiting in the library when he arrived, concern written across her face. Dr. Reeves called, she said. Said you left the house this morning without telling anyone. That's dangerous, Mr. Varese. What if something had happened? Something did happen. I handled it. Your heart rate's elevated again. Sit down. Let me check your vitals. Adrian let her work, feeling her gentle fingers on his wrist, her professional assessment of his eyes and color and breathing. She was frowning. Whatever you handled, it took a lot out of you. You need to rest. I will. Soon. Now. She said it firmly. You're running yourself into the ground, and I'm not going to watch you do it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to your room, take the pain medication you've been avoiding, and sleep for at least 6 hours. And I'm going to stay here to make sure you actually do it. You don't have to. I'm staying. Lena crossed her arms. You pay me to take care of you. This is me doing my job. Adrian looked at her, this stubborn woman who wouldn't back down even when he used the voice that made grown men nervous, and felt something warm and unfamiliar in his chest. Okay, he said quietly. I'll rest. Good. She started to leave, then paused. Mr. Verres, whatever happened today, whatever you handled, you came back. That counts for something. She left before he could respond, and Adrian sat alone in the library thinking about brothers and betrayal and the one person who seemed determined to keep him alive despite his best efforts otherwise. Outside, the sun was setting over the ocean, painting everything in shades of red and gold. Tomorrow he'd start rebuilding, reinforcing loyalties, sending messages about what happened to people who betrayed him. But tonight, he'd rest, and maybe, just for a few hours, let himself be human instead of king. Adrian woke at 3 in the morning to find Lena asleep in the chair beside his bed, her head tilted at an angle that would give her a terrible neck-ache, a medical textbook open in her lap. She'd actually stayed. He'd half expected her to leave once he fell asleep, to go home to whatever small apartment she probably rented on a nurse assistant salary. But she was here, keeping watch like she'd promised. He studied her in the dim light from the hallway. She looked younger when she slept, the careful composure gone. Just a tired woman who worked too hard and probably didn't take care of herself half as well as she took care of others. There was a scar on her left hand, thin and white, running from her thumb to her wrist. He'd noticed it before during therapy sessions, but never asked about it. The medication had actually worked. His body felt heavy, but the constant edge of pain had dulled to something manageable. 6 hours of real sleep, the first he'd gotten since the accident. His mind felt clearer than it had in weeks. Carefully, Adrian reached for his phone on the nightstand. 17 missed calls, 43 texts. He scrolled through them quickly. Most were from his people, checking in, reporting status, asking for instructions. 3 were from numbers he didn't recognize, those he deleted without reading. One was from Viktor Kozlov. Your brother took evening flight to Prague. Wise choice, letting him run. Shows strength, not weakness. We should talk soon about new arrangements. So Lucian had actually left. Good. One problem solved, a dozen more waiting. Marcus had sent a detailed report about the meeting's aftermath. Of the 8 people who'd been in that room, 5 had already reached out to reaffirm their loyalty. The other 3 had gone quiet, which meant they were either genuinely scared or regrouping. Adrian made a mental note to deal with them individually. Another text from Marcus, sent an hour ago. Rodriguez wants to meet. Says he has information about who else might have known about Lucian's plan. Adrian typed back. Set it up for tomorrow, noon, the warehouse. His phone buzzed immediately. You should rest more. I slept 6 hours. That's more than I've gotten in a month. Doctor's orders were 24 hours minimum. Since when do I follow doctor's orders? Since you hired me to make sure you don't kill yourself. Adrian smiled at the screen. Marcus knew better than to push him like this. Had learned years ago that Adrian did what Adrian wanted, but he also cared in his own gruff way. Noon, Adrian typed, non-negotiable. Fine, but I'm telling Lena you're being difficult. She already knows. Adrian set the phone down and looked at Lena again. She'd shifted slightly, the textbook sliding toward the floor. He caught it before it fell, glanced at the page she'd been reading. Cardiac emergencies. Treatment protocols for different types of heart failure. She was studying even while watching over him, cramming knowledge into whatever spare moments she could find. The dedication impressed him. Most people he knew only worked hard when someone was watching, when there was immediate reward or punishment at stake. Lena just worked, quietly and constantly, building toward something she wanted. You're awake, she said, her eyes opening without any of the disorientation most people showed when waking suddenly. Alert immediately, probably a skill from working with patients who could crash at any moment. You stayed. I said I would. Lena straightened in the chair, wincing as her neck protested. How do you feel? Better. The medication helped. Good. That means you'll actually take it from now on instead of pretending to. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You knew I was throwing them out? I'm not an idiot, Mr. Varese. The trash can in your library smells like chamomile and pharmaceutical coating, plus your pain levels haven't improved at all despite the prescription. She stood, stretched, checked her watch. It's 3 in the morning. You should try to sleep more. I'm done sleeping. Too much to do. Of course you are, Lena sighed, picking up her textbook. At least drink some water before you start working. And eat something. Your blood sugar's probably terrible. Yes, nurse. I'm not a nurse yet, but I will be. And when I am, I'm going to be the kind that patients actually listen to. She moved toward the door, paused. There's soup in the kitchen. Maria made it before she left yesterday. Heat it up, eat at least a bowl. I'll be back at 2 for your session. You're leaving. I have a 6 a.m. shift at the hospital. Double shift, actually, since one of the other aides called in sick. Lena looked at him steadily. Some of us have to work multiple jobs to pay for school. The quiet reproach stung more than it should have. Adrian, who owned a mansion and ran an empire worth millions, being reminded that this woman worked herself to exhaustion just to afford an education he could fund without noticing the expense. How much does nursing school cost? He asked. Lena's expression went wary. Why? Just curious. Mr. Varese, I appreciate the job you've given me. The pay is generous and the hours are flexible, but I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's a question. She studied him for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if answering would create some obligation she didn't want. Finally, she said, About 40,000 for the full program. I've saved 18 so far. Another 2 years and I should have enough to start. 2 years of double shifts and exhaustion, living on nothing, just to get to the starting line. What if you didn't have to wait 2 years, Adrian said. Mr. Varese, what if someone offered to cover the cost in exchange for you continuing to work for them during school? Flexible hours, same pay, but you could start the program next semester instead of 2 years from now. Lena's face went through several emotions. Suspicion, hope, fear, longing. She settled on stubborn pride. I don't accept handouts. It's not a handout. It's an employment contract. I need consistent medical care during recovery. You need tuition money. We both get what we want. What's the catch? No catch. You work for me, I pay for school. When you graduate, you're free to leave if you want, or stay if the job still suits you. People don't just give away $40,000. I'm not people, and I'm not giving it away. I'm investing in my own care. Adrian met her eyes. You're good at your job, Lena. Better than good. You actually give a damn, which is rare. I'd rather keep you than have to train someone else who'll just go through the motions. She stood in the doorway, torn between what she wanted and what her pride would let her accept. Adrian could see the war happening behind her eyes. Think about it, he said. No pressure, but the offer stands. Lena nodded slowly, still processing. I need to go. Shift starts in 2 hours, and I have to get across the city. Marcus can drive you. I take the bus. It's 3 in the morning. Let Marcus drive you. For a moment he thought she'd argue, but then exhaustion won out. Okay. Thank you. She left, and Adrian heard her quiet conversation with Marcus in the hallway, the sound of the elevator, the distant rumble of the garage door. Then silence. He transferred himself to the wheelchair, made his way to the library. The soup could wait. Work couldn't. By the time the sun came up, Adrian had restructured his entire distribution network, promoted 2 people who'd stayed loyal, and arranged for the 3 quiet ones from yesterday's meeting to receive visits from Marcus's most persuasive associates. Nothing violent, just reminders about the cost of wavering loyalty. He also started looking into nursing programs. There were 3 good ones in the city. One started classes in 6 weeks. If Lena accepted his offer, she could be enrolled before the end of the month. The thought pleased him more than it should have. Rodriguez showed up at the warehouse precisely at noon, looking nervous. The warehouse was one of Adrian's neutral meeting spaces, carefully chosen for its privacy and its implicit threat. Nothing bad had ever happened here, but the concrete floors and industrial lighting suggested it easily could. Mr. Varese. Rodriguez kept his distance, hands visible, body language submissive. He'd been with the organization for 8 years, running product through the southern ports. Reliable, competent, not particularly ambitious. The kind of person who made a good middle manager but would never reach the top. You said you had information, Adrian said, skipping pleasantries. His ribs were aching again, the morning's work catching up to him, but he kept his face neutral. Yeah, about Lucian's plan. Rodriguez shifted his weight. I didn't know about the accident, I swear. The brake lines, the murder attempt, that was news to me. But the takeover, the meetings, some of that I knew. How much? Lucian approached me about 3 months ago, said he was concerned about the business, about succession planning, wanted to know if I'd support a transition of leadership if something happened to you. And you said? I said I'd think about it. Rodriguez looked miserable. I didn't commit to anything, didn't promise support, but I also didn't tell you he was asking. That was wrong. I know that. Adrian studied the man, reading the genuine regret in his posture. Rodriguez had made a mistake, but not a betrayal. There was a difference. Who else did he approach? Chen for sure, probably Yuki, though she didn't say anything directly. And definitely Isabella, but you already know about that. Rodriguez paused. There might be others. Lucian was being careful, feeling people out individually. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw what happened yesterday. Saw you show up at that meeting when everyone thought you were too broken to fight back. Rodriguez met his eyes. You're still the boss, Mr. Verrace, wheelchair or not, and I'd rather be on the right side when you finish cleaning house. Honest, at least. Adrian appreciated that. You're going to help me finish cleaning house, Adrian said. Sir, you know these people. Know who else might have been sympathetic to Lucian's pitch. I want names, evidence, anything that helps me identify everyone who even considered betraying me. Rodriguez nodded quickly. I can do that. And Rodriguez? Next time someone approaches you about replacing me, you come to me first. Immediately. Not 3 months later when you're trying to save your own skin. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Good. Now get out. Rodriguez left like the warehouse was on fire. Adrian watched him go, then turned to Marcus, who'd been standing silent in the shadows. What do you think? Adrian asked. I think he's scared enough to be useful. Might actually be loyal now, or at least smart enough to fake it convincingly. Same thing in our business. Marcus moved closer, his expression concerned in a way he rarely showed. Boss, you look like hell. When's the last time you ate? This morning. Liar. Lena texted me, said you were supposed to eat soup, and you definitely didn't. Since when do you two coordinate behind my back? Since you stopped taking care of yourself. Marcus pulled out his phone, typed something. I'm ordering lunch. You're eating it. Then you're going home to rest before your afternoon session. I have 3 more meetings, which I'm rescheduling. Doctor's orders. You're not a doctor. No, but I'm the guy keeping you alive, and I'm telling you that you're pushing too hard too fast. You survived 1 murder attempt. Don't make my job harder by adding a heart attack to the list. Adrian wanted to argue, but the truth was he felt terrible. His ribs throbbed with every breath, his head ached, and the 6 hours of sleep hadn't been nearly enough to make up for weeks of exhaustion. Fine, he said, but I'm working from home this afternoon. I'm not going to bed like a child. I'll take what I can get. Lunch arrived 20 minutes later, Thai food from the place Adrian used to order from before the accident. He'd forgotten how good actual food tasted when you weren't just forcing down nutrition out of necessity. Marcus ate with him, talking through business details, carefully not mentioning the wheelchair or asking how Adrian was feeling. They were halfway through when Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Verrace. The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen from Pacific Coast Medical Center. I'm calling about one of my patients, Lena Chen. Adrian's stomach went cold. What happened? There was an incident during her shift this morning. A patient became violent and Ms. Chen was injured trying to protect another staff member. She's stable, but she has a concussion and some bruising. She's asking for you. I'm on my way. Which hospital? Dr. Chen gave him the address, and Adrian was already moving, Marcus helping him back to the wheelchair, both of them heading for the car. The drive to Pacific Coast Medical took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Adrian's mind ran through scenarios, each worse than the last. Concussion could mean anything from mild to severe. Bruising could hide internal injuries. She'd been hurt protecting someone else, which was so completely in character that it made his chest tight. The emergency room was chaos. Nurses and doctors moving between curtained areas, monitors beeping, someone crying in the distance. Dr. Chen met them at the desk, a tired-looking woman in her 40s with kind eyes. "Mr. Varese? She's in Bay 7. Follow me." Lena sat on an examination table, holding an ice pack to her left eye, her shirt torn at the shoulder. She looked up when Adrian wheeled in and tried to smile, winced instead. "Hey, sorry to bother you. What happened?" Adrian moved closer, trying to keep his voice calm, even though rage was building in his chest. "Patient in psychosis. He went after one of the new nurses. I got between them. He clipped me pretty good before security arrived." Lena lowered the ice pack, revealing a spectacular black eye already forming. "Could have been worse. Could have been her. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. I'm fine, Mr. Varese. Just bruised." Dr. Chen cleared her throat. "The concussion is mild, but we'd like to keep her overnight for observation. Standard protocol." "No," Lena said immediately. "I can't afford an overnight stay. I'll rest at home." "You shouldn't be alone with a concussion," Dr. Chen said gently. "I'll be fine." "She'll stay at my place," Adrian interrupted. "Guest room, and I have medical staff who can monitor her." Both women looked at him. "Mr. Varese, that's really not necessary," Lena started. "You got hurt at work. You need observation. I have the space and the resources." Adrian looked at Dr. Chen. "That acceptable medically? If there's someone qualified to check on her regularly, yes. Wake her every few hours. Watch for symptoms like vomiting, confusion, severe headache." "I can do that," Adrian said, though he'd probably have Lena do it herself since she was the actual medical professional. Lena opened her mouth to argue, caught the look on his face, closed it again. "Okay, thank you." Dr. Chen went through discharge instructions while Adrian watched Lena carefully. She was downplaying how much pain she was in, he could tell. The way she held herself too still, the careful breathing, the paleness under her skin. Someone had hurt her and she was pretending it didn't matter. The ride back to the mansion was quiet. Lena sat in the back seat with her eyes closed, ice pack pressed to her face. Marcus drove carefully, avoiding bumps, taking turns slowly. "I'm supposed to work tonight," Lena said suddenly. "Second shift at Valley Ridge Nursing Home. I need to call them." "I'll call them," Adrian said. "You're off work until you're cleared medically, but not negotiable. You have a concussion. You need to rest." Lena sighed but didn't argue further. By the time they reached the mansion, she was half asleep, exhaustion and adrenaline crash catching up to her. Marcus helped get her settled in the guest room, one of the nicer ones overlooking the garden. Maria had already prepared it, somehow knowing they'd need it before Adrian even called. The household staff were good like that, anticipating needs before they were spoken. "Sleep," Adrian told Lena, who was already lying down, still in her torn shirt and work pants. "I'll wake you in 2 hours to check on you." "Kay," she mumbled, eyes closing. Adrian watched her for a moment. This woman who'd thrown herself between a violent patient and a coworker without hesitation, who worked herself to exhaustion for people who probably didn't appreciate her, who treated him like a person instead of a king. Something had shifted. He wasn't sure when exactly, but somewhere between the physical therapy sessions and the honest conversations and her falling asleep in a chair watching over him, Lena had stopped being just an employee. She mattered. That was dangerous. In Adrian's world, people you cared about became targets, leverage, weaknesses to exploit. But he was so tired of only surrounding himself with people motivated by fear or profit, tired of relationships built on calculation instead of actual human connection. Maybe being dangerous was worth it. He returned to the library, tried to focus on work. Rodriguez had sent through a preliminary list of names, people Lucian had potentially approached. Adrian cross-referenced them with his own observations, started building a picture of who needed to be removed and who could be salvaged. His phone buzzed. Isabella. "We need to talk," her text read. Adrian almost deleted it, but curiosity won. "About what?" "About us. About what happens next. Can I come by?" "No. You have until tomorrow to collect your things. After that, you're not welcome on my property." "Adrian, please. I made a mistake. Lucian manipulated me, said things about you, about us. I shouldn't have believed him." You shouldn't have slept with him. A long pause, then, I'm sorry for all of it. Just give me a chance to explain. There's nothing to explain. You made your choice. Live with it. He blocked her number before she could respond. Isabella had been useful once, a political alliance that strengthened his position. But that usefulness had ended the moment she'd chosen Lucian over him. Adrian didn't believe in second chances, not in business and not in personal relationships. 2 hours later, he went to check on Lena. She was awake, sitting up in bed with a glass of water Marcus had apparently brought her. How are you feeling? Adrian asked. Like I got punched in the face by a guy twice my size. Lena tried to smile, winced, but no vomiting, no confusion, headaches manageable, pupils equal and reactive. You're checking your own concussion symptoms? Force of habit. She set the water down. Mr. Varese, about the nursing school offer. I've been thinking about it. And? Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just about having good medical care. You could hire a nurse tomorrow, someone with actual credentials instead of an assistant who's still learning. Adrian wheeled himself closer to the bed. You want the truth? Please. Everyone in my life wants something from me. Power, money, protection, status. They're loyal because it benefits them. And the second that calculation changes, they disappear. Or worse. He looked at her directly. You're the only person who doesn't want anything except to do your job well. Who treats me like a human being instead of a resource to exploit. That's rare enough that I'd like to keep it around. Lena absorbed this quietly. That's incredibly lonely. It's realistic. It's both. She pulled the blanket higher, thinking. If I accept, I want it in writing. Contract terms, clear expectations, exit clause, so I'm not trapped if things go wrong. Smart. I'll have my lawyer draft something. And I pay you back. Maybe not all at once, maybe it takes 10 years, but I pay back every dollar. Lena, those are my terms, Mr. Varese. I don't want to owe you. I want to earn this. Her pride was going to be expensive, but Adrian respected it. Fine. Repayment plan, interest-free, flexible schedule. Deal. Lena held out her hand. Adrian took it, shook carefully, felt the calluses on her palm from years of hard work. Her grip was firm, despite the concussion, despite the exhaustion, despite everything. Thank you, she said quietly. Thank you for staying. She gave him a puzzled look. Staying where? Last night? You said you'd watch over me and you did. Most people say things they don't mean. You meant it. Of course I did. Why would I lie about something like that? Because everyone lies, Adrian thought. Because truth is currency and trust is weakness and sincerity gets you killed. But he didn't say that. Instead, he said, get some rest. I'll check on you in another 2 hours. The next 3 days settled into a strange routine. Lena recovered in the guest room, getting clearer and steadier each day. Adrian worked from the library, slowly rebuilding his network's confidence. Isabella collected her belongings while he was out meeting with distributors, left without seeing him. Smart of her. Marcus reported that Lucian had surfaced in Prague, already trying to establish connections with Eastern European suppliers. Ambitious and stupid. Adrian made a few calls, let certain people know that anyone doing business with Lucian Varese would find themselves cut off from Adrian's considerably more lucrative network. The message got through. Lucian would find Europe a lot less welcoming than he'd hoped. On the 4th day, Lena was cleared to return to work. She came to the library that morning dressed in fresh clothes, the black eye faded to yellow-green, moving with her usual efficiency. I'm going back to my apartment tonight, she announced. Concussions resolved. I'm cleared for normal activity. Adrian had known this was coming, but still felt a strange disappointment. The mansion had felt less empty with her in it. When do you want to start school? He asked. Next semester if possible. That gives me 6 weeks to get my affairs in order, finish up my current jobs, prepare. She pulled a folder from her bag. I looked into the programs. Pacific Coast has the best reputation, and they start classes in September. I'll make the calls today. Mr. Varese, Adrian. She corrected herself, the first name still uncomfortable in her mouth. Are you sure about this? It's a lot of money. I'm sure. But what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? You'll be good enough. You care too much not to be. Lena studied him with those too honest eyes. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A monster, I think. That's what the news says. What people whisper about. Adrian Varese, the crime king, ruthless and cold. She tilted her head. But you're not. You're just a man who's been hurt too many times and built walls to survive it. The assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Don't make the mistake of thinking I'm good, Lena. I've done things that would horrify you. Probably. But you've also been kind to me when you didn't have to be. Generous beyond reason. That counts for something. Kindness and generosity don't erase the rest. No, Lena agreed, but they complicate the picture, make you human instead of just scary. She smiled slightly. I think I prefer you human. She left before Adrian could respond, and he sat in the library thinking about monsters and humanity and whether it was possible to be both. His phone rang. Victor Kozlov. Adrian, we should meet. There are developments you need to know about. What kind of developments? The kind best discussed in person. Tonight, 8 o'clock, my club? Adrian hesitated. Meeting with Victor meant walking into the Russians' territory, putting himself at a disadvantage. But Victor had been neutral during Lucian's coup attempt, even slightly supportive of Adrian. That was worth acknowledging. I'll be there. Good. Come alone. Just business talk, no need for your guard dog. The line went dead. Adrian sat back, considering. Victor didn't make social calls. If he wanted to meet, it was because something significant had shifted in the city's power structure, something that affected both their interests, which meant it was probably important. That evening, Marcus drove Adrian to Victor's club in the warehouse district. The place looked abandoned from outside, just another industrial building slowly decaying. Inside was a different story. Renovated luxury, leather and dark wood, and expensive liquor, the kind of place where deals got made and secrets got traded. Victor waited in a private booth near the back, vodka already poured. He stood when Adrian wheeled over, made a small gesture of respect. Adrian, you look better than last week. I'm harder to kill than people think. Victor laughed, genuine and loud. This is true. Sit, drink. We have things to discuss. The vodka was excellent, smooth, and cold. Adrian took a careful sip, waiting. Your brother, Victor began. He is making noise in Prague, telling people he's the new Varese, that you're finished. Let him talk. No one believes him. Not yet. But he's persistent, and he has Isabella with him, using her family connections. Victor leaned forward. Here is what you should know. Some of my associates, they are listening. Not committing, but listening, because they see you in wheelchair and they wonder. Wonder what? If the great Adrian Varese can still hold his empire from that chair. If maybe it's time for new leadership. Victor held up a hand before Adrian could respond. I tell them no. Tell them you are stronger now than before, that survival makes you dangerous. But not everyone listens to old Russian. Adrian absorbed this carefully. The question he'd been avoiding since the accident, laid out plainly. Could he maintain power while paralyzed, or would the empire slowly crumble as people lost faith? What do you suggest? Adrian asked. You need show of strength, something that reminds everyone why they fear you. Not violence, not yet. Something smarter. Like what? Victor smiled, sharp and knowing. You have been silent too long, hiding in your mansion, making phone calls. People need to see you. Need to remember that Adrian Varese does not hide, does not break, does not surrender. I've been recovering. You've been recovered enough for 3 weeks now, but still you stay away from meetings, from gatherings. This creates impression of weakness. Victor poured more vodka. There is summit next month, all major families discussing new territorial agreements. You should attend. Show them you're still player. Adrian knew about the summit. He'd been planning to send a representative, let someone else handle the politics while he worked behind scenes. But Victor was right. Absence sent a message whether he intended it or not. I'll be there, Adrian said. Good. And Adrian? Victor's expression turned serious. Watch your household. Not everyone close to you is loyal. There are whispers about information leaving your organization, finding its way to competitors. You have names? Suspicions only. But be careful. The snake who bites you might be one you're already feeding. They talked business for another hour, solidifying old agreements and establishing new ones. Victor was angling for expansion into the northern ports, territory Adrian controlled. They negotiated, compromised, found terms that benefited both. When Adrian finally left, his head was buzzing with more than vodka. Victor's warning about a traitor in his household echoed in his thoughts. Who had that kind of access? Who could be passing information? The obvious answer was his household staff, but they'd all been with him for years. Vetted, loyal, well compensated. Unless someone new had been placed, someone who seemed innocent. Adrian pushed the thought away before it could fully form. Not Lena. She was too genuine, too straightforward. But he'd been fooled before. By Isabella, by Lucian, by a dozen others who'd seemed trustworthy right up until they weren't. Trust no one. That had been his rule for years. But as Marcus drove him home through the dark city, Adrian wondered if maybe that rule had cost him more than it protected. The suspicion sat in Adrian's mind like poison, spreading slowly through every interaction. He watched Maria more carefully when she brought his coffee. Noticed how Jin's eyes tracked movement in the hallway. Questioned Marcus's every suggestion with new wariness. Everyone became a potential threat. Every conversation a possible trap. He hated it. Hated what years in this business had done to him, how it made him dissect kindness until he found the angle, the manipulation, the betrayal waiting underneath. 3 days after the meeting with Victor, Adrian set up cameras throughout the mansion, hidden, encrypted, recording everything. Marcus handled the installation, asking no questions because he knew better. If there was a snake in the house, Adrian would find it. Lena arrived for their afternoon session, looking tired, dark circles under her eyes that even makeup couldn't fully hide. She'd been back at her regular jobs for a week now, burning through double shifts again, saving every dollar even though Adrian had already arranged her tuition. "You look exhausted," Adrian said. "Long night. One of my patients at Valley Ridge passed away. Mrs. Kowalski. She was 93, had been declining for months, but it's still hard." Lena set down her equipment with less than her usual care. I held her hand at the end. Her family couldn't make it in time. "I'm sorry. Part of the job. Doesn't make it easier, though." She pulled out resistance bands mechanically, going through setup on autopilot. She kept calling me Anna. That was her daughter's name. Died in a car accident 20 years ago. Adrian watched her work, saw the grief she was trying to compartmentalize, and felt his suspicions crumble a little. This wasn't the behavior of someone gathering intelligence for competitors. This was just a tired woman dealing with the emotional weight of her job. "Take the day off," Adrian said. Lena looked up, surprised. "What?" "You're exhausted, grieving. You're not going to be effective today anyway. Take the day off." "I can work." "I know you can. I'm telling you not to." Adrian softened his voice. "Go home, Lena. Sleep. Process what you're feeling. Come back tomorrow." She stood there holding the resistance bands, clearly torn between professional obligation and the desperate need to just stop for a moment. Finally, her shoulders sagged. "Okay. Thank you. And Lena, stop working the double shifts. You're starting school in 5 weeks. You don't need to kill yourself saving money anymore." "Old habits," she said quietly. "Hard to trust that things have actually changed." Adrian understood that better than she knew. After she left, he spent the afternoon reviewing the camera footage from the past 72 hours. Nothing suspicious jumped out. Staff doing their jobs, Marcus coordinating security, the routine functioning of a household. He was about to shut it down when movement on the kitchen camera caught his attention. Maria, his housekeeper of 6 years, on her phone. The angle didn't show the screen, but her body language was furtive, nervous. She kept glancing toward the hallway, shoulders hunched like she was afraid of being caught. Adrian enhanced the audio, filtered out background noise. Her voice came through, accented and worried. "I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that. No, he doesn't talk about business around me. I'm just the housekeeper. Why would he tell me anything?" A pause as the other person spoke. "I can't do this anymore. It feels wrong. He's been good to me, to my family." Another pause, longer. "Fine. But this is the last time. After this, I'm done." The call ended. Maria stood in the kitchen for a long moment, hand pressed to her mouth, looking like she might cry. Then she straightened her shoulders and went back to work. Adrian sat back in his wheelchair, something cold settling in his chest. Maria, who'd worked for him since before the empire really took off, who he'd helped when her son needed expensive medical treatment, who he trusted with his home. Reporting to someone. He could have Marcus pick her up immediately, get answers through intimidation or worse. That was the standard play. But something about her obvious distress, her reluctance, made him pause. She'd said it felt wrong, said she was done after this. Maybe there was another approach. Adrian called Marcus. I need you to track Maria's phone. Find out who she's been calling, who's been calling her, but don't touch her yet. I want the full picture first. Boss, if she's the leak, then we handle it carefully. She's scared, Marcus. Someone has leverage on her. I want to know what and who. Marcus was silent for a moment. You're getting soft. I'm being strategic. There's a difference. But maybe Marcus was right. The old Adrian would have eliminated the problem immediately. No questions, no second thoughts. People betrayed you. You removed them. Simple, clean, effective. Except nothing about his life felt simple or clean anymore. The investigation took 2 days. Marcus came back with a file that told an ugly story. Maria's younger brother, Manuel, had gotten himself involved with a rival organization. Owed money he couldn't pay. They'd given him a choice: work it off by getting information from his sister or disappear permanently. So Maria had been feeding them scraps. Nothing major, just enough to keep her brother alive. Guest lists when Adrian had visitors. His approximate schedule, whether he seemed recovered or still struggling. Small details that individually meant little but added up to a useful picture. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. Adrian looked at the file, at the photos of Maria's terrified brother, at the recorded calls where she begged them to let her family go. She'd been protecting someone she loved. He understood that motivation, even if he couldn't forgive the betrayal. Bring Manuel in, Adrian said, quietly. Pay off his debt to the other organization, absorb the cost ourselves. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Just like that? Just like that. Then bring Maria to the library. I want to talk to her. An hour later, Maria stood in front of his desk, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She wouldn't meet his eyes, just stared at the floor with the expression of someone waiting for execution. How long have you known? She asked quietly. A few days, long enough to find your brother and clear his debt. Her head snapped up. What? Manuel's debt is paid. He's safe. They won't come after him anymore. Adrian kept his voice even. You should have told me, Maria. I would have helped. Tears streamed down her face. I was afraid. They said if I told anyone, if I went to you, they'd kill him. I didn't know what to do. So you gave them information about me instead. Little things. Nothing that would hurt you, I swear. Just enough to keep them satisfied. She wiped her eyes roughly. I'm sorry, Mr. Verrace. I'm so sorry. I'll leave. I'll go right now. Just please don't hurt my brother. Adrian studied her, this woman who'd kept his home running for 6 years, who'd never asked for anything beyond her salary, who'd been forced into an impossible position. You're not fired, he said. Maria stared at him. What? You made a mistake. An understandable one under the circumstances. But it's over now. Your brother's safe, the debt's clear, you have no reason to report to them anymore. But I betrayed you. You protected your family. I can't fault that, even if it put me at risk. Adrian wheeled himself closer. But Maria, if anything like this happens again, if anyone threatens you or your family, or tries to leverage you in any way, you come to me immediately. Understood? She nodded, still crying. I don't deserve this after what I did. You made a choice in an impossible situation. Now you get to make a different choice. Be loyal from here on out or leave. Your decision. I'll stay. I'll be loyal. I promise. Good. Now go clean something. You're making me uncomfortable with all the crying. Maria almost laughed through her tears, nodded, and left quickly. Marcus waited until the door closed before speaking. That was unexpected. Was it the wrong call? I don't know yet, but it's definitely not how you would have handled this a year ago. Adrian knew he was right. A year ago, Maria would be gone. Her brother too, probably, just to make the point about consequences. The empire ran on fear and the certainty that betrayal meant death. But fear only worked until people became more afraid of something else. And death was permanent, eliminating any possibility of earned loyalty. Maybe there was another way. The summit was scheduled for 3 weeks out, giving Adrian time to prepare. He started making appearances again, showing up at key meetings, letting people see him working from the wheelchair without apology or explanation. Some reacted with pity, others with barely concealed calculation. He noted who fell into which category. Lena had moved back to her apartment, but still came daily for therapy sessions. Their conversations had shifted into something more than medical care, ranging across topics that had nothing to do with his recovery. She told him about nursing school applications, about the patients she cared for, about her mother's last months. He found himself talking about the business in abstract terms, about the challenge of maintaining control when physical presence had always been part of his power. "You rely too much on intimidation," Lena said one afternoon, adjusting his grip on a resistance band. "There are other ways to lead people." "Such as?" "Respect. Actual respect, not fear disguised as respect. People follow leaders they believe in, not just leaders they're afraid of. Fear is more reliable. Fear is fragile. The second someone stops being afraid, you've lost them." She counted his reps quietly. "Respect lasts, even when you're not in the room." Adrian thought about that while pushing through the exercises. His empire was built on fear and profit, on the understanding that crossing Adrian Verrace meant consequences. But how much of that was actually sustainable? How many people stayed loyal only because leaving seemed more dangerous? And what would happen when he couldn't personally enforce those consequences anymore? 15 more, Lena said. "You're getting stronger. Upper body strength is way better than when we started. Because you're a relentless taskmaster. Because you're stubborn and competitive. I just give you targets to hit." She smiled slightly. "You're going to be fine, Mr. Verrace. Maybe not the same as before, but fine. Different kind of fine." What if different fine isn't enough? Then you make it enough. Adapt. Find new ways to be effective. Lena stepped back, letting him finish the set on his own. The human body is incredibly resilient when you stop fighting what it's become and start working with it instead. Sound advice that applied to more than just physical therapy. That evening, Adrian got a call from Rodriguez. "Boss, we have a problem. Chen's disappeared." Chen was one of the distributors who'd been quiet after Lucian's failed coup, one of the ones Adrian had flagged as potentially disloyal. He'd been cooperative since, showing up for meetings, fulfilling orders. No indication he was planning to run. When? Sometime in the last 12 hours. Didn't show up for a scheduled delivery this morning. His phone's off. Apartment's empty. His girlfriend says she hasn't seen him. He take anything with him? Money? Product? That's the weird part. Everything's still here. His accounts are untouched. The warehouse inventory is complete. It's like he just vanished. Adrian's instincts prickled. People didn't just disappear from his organization without a reason. Either Chen was running from something, or someone had taken him. "Find him," Adrian ordered, quietly, "and find out who he talked to in the last week." Rodriguez promised to report back and hung up. Adrian sat in the library as darkness fell over the ocean, turning the problem over in his mind. Chen's disappearance coming right before the summit felt too convenient to be coincidence. His phone rang again. Victor. "Adrian, have you heard about Chen?" "Just did. You know something?" "Rumors. He was seen meeting with representatives from the Santiago cartel 2 days ago. They've been trying to expand into your territory for months." The Santiago cartel was aggressive and ambitious, relatively new players trying to establish themselves through force and intimidation. Adrian had been keeping them at a distance, making it clear that the West Coast wasn't available for their expansion. But if they'd managed to turn Chen— "You think he sold out?" Adrian asked. "I think someone made him an offer that looked better than staying loyal to a boss in a wheelchair." There was no malice in Victor's voice, just blunt assessment. The reality Adrian had been avoiding since the accident laid out plainly. "If Chen's with Santiago, they'll use him to access your distribution network," Victor continued. "Hit you from inside, grab territory while you're vulnerable. Classic move." "Not if I hit them first." "Adrian." Victor's voice went serious. "You go to war with Santiago right now. Other families will see it as weakness. See you struggling to hold territory, maybe decide it's time to grab their own pieces." "So what? I just let them take Chen? Let them think I'm too weak to respond?" "I'm saying choose your battles carefully. The summit is in 3 weeks. Show strength there. Remind everyone why they respect you. Then deal with Santiago from position of power, not desperation." Adrian wanted to argue, but Victor was right. Overreacting now would look exactly like what it was. a desperate attempt to prove he was still in control. Better to wait, plan, strike when the timing was right. 3 weeks, Adrian said, but if Santiago makes a move before then, I respond immediately. Of course, this is war after all. Just smart war, not stupid war. After they hung up, Adrian sat in the darkness thinking about battles and timing and the difference between reaction and strategy. Everything in him wanted to hunt down Chen immediately, make an example that would terrify anyone else considering betrayal. But that was fear talking, the old playbook of intimidation and violence. Maybe it was time to try something different. The next morning, Adrian called a meeting of his key people. 8 of them gathered in the mansion's conference room, the same core group who'd built and maintained the empire for years. Marcus, Rodriguez, Jin, Yuki, and 4 others. They looked uncertain seeing him wheel to the head of the table, probably expecting bad news about Chen. I want to talk about the future, Adrian began. Not just dealing with immediate threats, but where this organization goes from here. Confused glances around the table. This wasn't how Adrian usually ran meetings. The accident changed things, Adrian continued, made me look weak to our competitors, created openings for people like Santiago to make moves. Some of you are probably wondering if I can still lead effectively. No one spoke, but the question hung in the air. Fair concern. I've been wondering the same thing. Adrian looked at each of them. But here's what I've realized. I've been leading through fear and physical dominance for 10 years. That worked when I could walk into a room and make people nervous just by standing there. But that's not who I am anymore. Boss, Rodriguez started. Let me finish. I can't be that person anymore. But I can be something else. Smarter, more strategic, someone who stays 10 steps ahead instead of relying on intimidation. Yuki spoke up, her voice carefully neutral. What does that mean practically? It means we adapt. Strengthen our intelligence network so we know what's coming before it arrives. Build alliances based on mutual benefit instead of just fear. Invest in loyalty instead of just demanding it. That's a big change, Jin said. It is. And it starts with this. I want your honest feedback. What's not working? Where are we vulnerable? What would you change if you had the authority? Silence. They weren't used to being asked their opinions, weren't sure if this was a test or genuine invitation. Finally, Rodriguez spoke. Distribution network is too centralized. If we lose a key person like Chen, it creates gaps. We should have redundancy built in. Good. What else? Slowly they started talking. About communication problems, about territorial disputes that could be resolved diplomatically instead of violently, about younger members who had good ideas but no path to share them. Adrian listened, taking notes, asking questions. By the end of 2 hours, he had a clear picture of his organization's weaknesses and a dozen ideas for how to address them. More importantly, the people in this room looked engaged in a way they hadn't been in years, like they were part of something instead of just following orders. One more thing, Adrian said as they were wrapping up. Chen's disappearance. I know there's probably rumors about him selling out to Santiago. Nods around the table. We're going to find out the truth before we react. If he's betrayed us, we respond appropriately, but I'm not making assumptions based on fear. And if Santiago's made their move, like Yuki asked, then we show them why that was a mistake, but strategically, not impulsively. After they left, Marcus lingered. That was different. Good different or bad different? Not sure yet. But they were listening, really listening, not just pretending while they waited for orders. Progress then. Maybe. Or maybe you're getting soft and they're planning to exploit it. Adrian smiled grimly. Always the optimist. Someone has to balance out your new reformed attitude. But Marcus was smiling too, and Adrian realized his oldest lieutenant was proud of him. Proud that he was adapting instead of breaking, finding new ways to lead instead of clinging to old methods that no longer worked. That night, Lena arrived for their session to find Adrian already working through exercises on his own, pushing harder than usual. Someone's motivated, she observed, trying to get stronger. The summit's in 3 weeks and I need to look capable. You are capable. The wheelchair doesn't change that. Tell that to the other families. Lena watched him work for a moment, then said quietly, You know what I notice about you? What? You've survived something that would have destroyed most people. You've adapted, learned new ways to do your job, kept your entire organization running despite massive physical trauma. That's not weakness, Mr. Varese. That's extraordinary strength. Adrian stopped mid-exercise, looking at her. You really believe that? Of course I do. I've watched you push through pain that would have most people begging for morphine. I've seen you work 16-hour days from a wheelchair when you could barely stay conscious. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Something in Adrian's chest loosened hearing those words. He'd been so focused on what he'd lost, his ability to walk, to physically intimidate, to command a room through presence alone, that he'd missed what he'd gained: resilience, adaptability, a different kind of power. Thank you, he said quietly. Lena just nodded and helped him through the rest of the session. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that came from months of spending time together, learning each other's rhythms. When they finished, Lena packed up her equipment but didn't immediately leave. She seemed to be working up to saying something. Just ask, Adrian said. The summit you mentioned, that's the big meeting with all the crime families? Yes. Why? Because I've been thinking about what you said, about needing to look capable, commanding respect from a wheelchair. Lena met his eyes. What if you brought me? Adrian blinked. What? Not as your nurse, as your, I don't know, assistant, consultant, someone competent at your side who clearly respects you, who treats you as an equal. She spoke quickly, like she'd rehearsed this. People see a man in a wheelchair alone and they see weakness, but a man in a wheelchair with a capable professional supporting him? That looks like smart resource management. Lena, these meetings are dangerous. The people there are criminals. I know, but I'm not asking to be involved in your business. I'm offering to help you project strength. There's a difference. Adrian considered it. Showing up to the summit alone would reinforce the image of isolation, of a king losing his grip. But arriving with someone clearly in a supportive role, someone who treated him with respect instead of pity or fear, that sent a different message. It could put you at risk, Adrian said. So does crossing the street. I can handle risk. These aren't theoretical risks. These are people who've killed for less than looking at them wrong. Then I won't look at them wrong. Lena smiled slightly. I'm tougher than I look, Mr. Varese, and I think I can help. Let me. Adrian studied her, this small woman with her quiet determination, and made a decision that probably broke a dozen of his own rules about keeping personal and professional separate. Okay, but you stay close to me at all times. You don't engage unless I say so. And if anything goes wrong, Marcus gets you out immediately. Deal. She left looking pleased with herself, and Adrian sat alone wondering if he'd just made a brilliant strategic decision or a terrible mistake. Probably both. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Adrian met with allies, shored up loyalties, made sure everyone knew he'd be attending the summit personally. Word spread quickly. The wheelchair-bound king was coming out of hiding. Chen turned up 4 days before the summit, his body found in a warehouse with Santiago cartel markings all over the scene. They'd killed him after he'd given them whatever information they wanted, made it look like Adrian's people had done it to send a message. Sloppy work. Insulting, really. Adrian had Marcus leak word that Chen had been a traitor who'd gotten exactly what he deserved. Let Santiago think their provocation had worked, that Adrian was rattled and reactive. They'd learned different at the summit. The morning of the meeting, Adrian dressed in his best suit, the charcoal one that had been tailored before the accident and somehow still fit despite the weight loss. He looked at himself in the mirror, this man in expensive fabric and a wheelchair, scars visible on his hands from the crash, exhaustion permanent in his eyes, and barely recognized himself. But there was something new there too, something harder and clearer than the man who'd driven off that cliff 3 months ago. He'd survived. He'd adapted. He'd learned to lead without relying on the physical dominance that had defined him for so long. That had to count for something. Lena arrived precisely on time, dressed professionally in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. She'd pulled her hair back severely, wore minimal makeup, looked every inch the competent professional. Ready? Adrian asked. Ready. Marcus drove them to the hotel hosting the summit, a luxury property the families had rented out entirely for the weekend. Security was everywhere, familiar faces from various organizations. They watched Adrian's arrival with undisguised interest, noting the wheelchair, noting Lena, calculating what it all meant. Let them calculate. The main meeting was held in a ballroom that had been converted to a conference space. 30 people representing 15 different organizations, all the major players in the Western territories. Adrian wheeled in with Lena walking beside him, Marcus following at a professional distance. The room went quiet. Victor stood from a table near the front, gestured to an open space. Adrian, good to see you, Mobile. A few uncomfortable laughs at the pun. Adrian just smiled and wheeled to the designated spot. Lena positioned herself slightly behind and to his right, posture perfect, expression neutral. Exactly where a professional assistant would stand. The meeting began with the usual formalities, territorial agreements, and dispute resolutions. Adrian participated when relevant, his voice carrying the same authority it always had. Some people responded normally. Others kept glancing at the wheelchair, at Lena, trying to figure out the power dynamic. Then Santiago's representatives brought up Chen. We understand Mr. Varese lost one of his key distributors recently, Carlos Santiago said, his accent thick, his smile predatory. Unfortunate. These things happen when leadership is distracted. The provocation was obvious. Adrian felt Lena tense beside him, but her expression didn't change. Chen was a traitor, Adrian said calmly. He got what traitors get. Nothing unfortunate about it, of course. But it does raise questions about stability, about whether certain territories are being properly managed. My territories are fine, Carlos. But if you're concerned about proper management, we should talk about your operation in Phoenix. The one that's hemorrhaging money because you're too busy expanding to notice your own people stealing from you. Carlos's smile froze. Around the room, people shifted with interest. Adrian had done his homework, knew exactly where Santiago was vulnerable. That's a baseless accusation, Carlos said. Is it? Because I have documentation. Names, amounts, dates. Your finance guy, Miguel? He's been skimming for 6 months. About 200,000 so far. Adrian kept his voice conversational. I'd offer to share the details, but I'm guessing you'd rather handle that internally. The room stayed silent. Carlos looked like he wanted to reach across the table and strangle Adrian, but doing so in front of 15 other families would be suicide. Instead, he sat back, smile gone, calculation in his eyes. Information like that, Carlos said slowly. Where would you get it? I'm in a wheelchair, not dead. My intelligence network works fine. Adrian met his eyes. Actually, it works better than fine. Turns out when you can't physically chase down every problem, you get very good at staying informed. Victor laughed, genuine and loud. This is why I like you, Adrian. Even broken, still dangerous. Not broken, Lena said quietly. Adapted. Every eye in the room turned to her. She didn't flinch, just stood there with calm professionalism. And you are? Carlos asked. Lena Chen, Mr. Varese's medical consultant. Medical consultant, Carlos said it mockingly. Pretty young for such an important role. Pretty qualified, actually, but thank you for your concern. Adrian had to work not to smile. Lena had just shut down one of the most dangerous men in the room with perfect politeness. Around the table, several people were hiding their own amusement. The meeting continued for another 3 hours, covering everything from shipping routes to jurisdictional boundaries to coordinated responses to law enforcement pressure. Adrian participated fully, demonstrating that his mind was as sharp as ever, that the wheelchair didn't diminish his strategic value. By the time they broke for dinner, the room's energy had shifted. People were no longer looking at him with pity or calculation. They were looking at him with the same wary respect they'd always shown. During the break, Victor approached. You made your point. The wheelchair doesn't matter. It matters, Adrian said, but it doesn't define everything. True. And bringing the girl, that was smart. Shows confidence. Victor glanced at Lena, who was standing with Marcus, both of them watching the room. She's loyal. Completely. Good. Loyalty is rare. Victor lowered his voice. Santiago is angry. Watch yourself with him. I'm always watching. The rest of the summit passed without incident. Agreements were made, territories confirmed, disputes resolved. When it ended, Adrian had successfully re-established his position among the families, not despite the wheelchair, but alongside it. A new kind of power dynamic that relied on intelligence and strategy instead of physical intimidation. On the drive home, Lena was quiet, processing everything she'd witnessed. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "That was intense. I've never seen anything like that." "Welcome to my world. Your world is terrifying." She looked at him. "But you were impressive. The way you handled Santiago, the way you commanded that room. The wheelchair really doesn't matter to you anymore, does it?" "It matters, but I'm learning to work with it instead of against it." Lena smiled. "Good. That's what I've been trying to tell you for months." When they got back to the mansion, Lena helped him inside despite his protests that he could manage. At the library door, she paused. "Thank you for letting me come today. It helped me understand what you do, why you are the way you are." "And what way is that?" "Careful, strategic, always thinking 3 moves ahead." She met his eyes. "Also lonely. So lonely it hurts to see sometimes." The observation cut deeper than it should have. "Loneliness is safer than trust," Adrian said quietly. "Maybe, but it's also emptier." Lena squeezed his shoulder gently. "You don't have to be alone all the time, Mr. Varese. Some people are worth the risk." She left before he could respond, and Adrian sat in the dark library wondering if she was right, if maybe after everything he'd survived, it was finally time to let someone in completely. The question was whether he was brave enough to try. The weeks after the summit brought unexpected changes. Word spread quickly through the criminal networks that Adrian Varese had not only attended but dominated the meeting, wheelchair and all. Carlos Santiago's intelligence leak about his own organization had proven accurate, leading to internal purges that weakened Santiago's position considerably. Other families took note. The man in the wheelchair was still 10 steps ahead. But the real shift was happening inside Adrian himself, in places he'd kept carefully locked for years. It started small. He asked Lena to stay for dinner one evening after their session, just casual conversation over the meal Maria had prepared. She'd hesitated, clearly aware of the professional boundary they'd be crossing, but eventually agreed. They talked about her classes starting next week, about a patient at Valley Ridge who reminded her of her mother, about nothing and everything. When she left that night, the mansion felt emptier than it had in months. Adrian started finding excuses to extend their sessions. An extra set of exercises, questions about her studies, requests for her opinion on things that had nothing to do with physical therapy. Lena went along with it, probably because she was kind or because she genuinely enjoyed their conversations, but Adrian could see the question forming in her eyes. What are we doing here? He didn't have an answer, or rather, he had an answer he wasn't ready to admit. Marcus noticed, of course. You're playing with fire, boss. I'm having dinner with someone. That's not fire. It is when that someone is falling for you and you're too stubborn to admit you're falling back. Adrian wanted to deny it, but Marcus knew him too well. It's complicated. It's only complicated because you make it complicated. She likes you. You like her. Everything else is just excuses. Everything else is my entire life. The empire, the violence, the constant threat. I can't just pretend that doesn't exist. I'm not saying pretend. I'm saying be honest. With her and with yourself. Marcus leaned against the desk. You've survived everything they threw at you, Adrian. Don't let fear of being happy be the thing that finally breaks you. The conversation stayed with Adrian for days, circling in his mind during meetings and late-night work sessions. He'd built his entire adult life around control and distance, around never letting anyone close enough to hurt him. And it had worked, in its way. He'd built an empire, accumulated power and wealth, commanded respect through fear and strategy. But he'd also spent 10 years fundamentally alone. The question was whether he was brave enough to try something different. Lena started nursing school the first week of September. She came to their session that Monday practically vibrating with excitement, talking about her professors and classmates, and the anatomy lab she'd be working in. Adrian listened, watching her face light up in a way it never had when she talked about her aid jobs. This is what you're meant to do, he said when she paused for breath. I think so. It feels right, you know, like everything before was just marking time until I could get here. She smiled at him, genuine and warm. Thank you for making it possible. You would have gotten here eventually. Eventually isn't now. Now matters. Lena started setting up for their exercises, then stopped. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer. Are you happy? The question caught Adrian off guard. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy? With your life, your choices, how things turned out? Adrian thought about it honestly. 3 months ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. The empire was everything, success measured in territory and profit in fear. But now, sitting in this library with a woman who saw past all that to the man underneath, he wasn't sure anymore. I'm satisfied, he said finally. I built something significant. That counts for something. Satisfied isn't happy. Maybe happy isn't realistic in my world. Lena studied him with those two perceptive eyes. Or maybe you just haven't let yourself try. She left him with that thought, and Adrian spent the rest of the evening wrestling with it. What would happiness even look like for someone like him? He couldn't go legitimate, couldn't just walk away from the empire he'd built. Too many people depended on him. Too many enemies would see departure as weakness. But maybe he could build something alongside the empire. Something separate and clean and his alone. The idea terrified him more than any business threat ever had. 2 weeks later, Santiago made his move. Not against Adrian directly, but against one of his smaller distributors in the south. They hit a warehouse, took product and money, left 3 people dead. The message was clear. The intelligence leak at the summit hadn't been forgotten or forgiven. Adrian's people wanted immediate retaliation. Blood for blood, the old way. Marcus assembled a strike team, presented options for targets. It would be easy to hit back, to remind Santiago why starting wars with Adrian Fiancée was a mistake, but something made Adrian pause. What do we actually gain from this? He asked the room full of lieutenants. Confused silence. Rodriguez spoke up first. We gain respect. Show we won't tolerate attacks. We already have respect. The summit proved that. Adrian looked around the table. What I'm asking is, does killing Santiago's people actually solve the problem? Or does it just escalate into a war that costs us all money and lives? You're saying we do nothing, Yuki sounded incredulous. I'm saying we think strategically instead of emotionally. Santiago wants us to retaliate because it justifies his next move, gives him political cover with the other families. We're the aggressors. He's just defending himself. Jin leaned forward. So what's the alternative? We make the attack irrelevant. Santiago took 1 warehouse. We have 15 others. We increase security, redistribute product, make it clear the hit didn't actually hurt us. Adrian pulled up financial projections on the screen. Then we wait. Santiago's organization is already weak from the internal problems we exposed. He can't afford a prolonged conflict. Eventually, he'll need to come to the table. And if he doesn't, Marcus asked, then we've lost nothing by waiting. But if we react emotionally, we lose money, people, and strategic position. Adrian looked at each of them. I'm not saying we roll over, I'm saying we fight smart instead of loud. The room was quiet, his people clearly torn between the immediate satisfaction of revenge and the long-term logic of patience. Finally, Victor's voice came through the conference speaker. Adrian is right. This is what smart leadership looks like. The old Russian's endorsement carried weight. One by one, the others nodded agreement. They'd wait, watch, let Santiago exhaust himself against their defenses. After the meeting, Marcus lingered. You've changed. Is that a criticism? It's an observation. The old you would have burned Santiago's entire operation to the ground by now. The old me had working legs and unlimited energy for wars. This me has to be smarter. Adrian rubbed his face, tired from the long meeting. I'm not going soft, Marcus. I'm adapting. I know, and it's working. People are listening to you in ways they didn't before, not because they're scared, but because you make sense. High praise. Don't let it go to your head. Marcus moved toward the door, paused. Lena's in the library. She came by for your session but didn't want to interrupt. Adrian found her reading one of his books, curled up in the leather chair with her shoes off and her hair loose. She looked up when he wheeled in, smiled apologetically. Sorry, I know I should have waited in the other room, but this chair is really comfortable and I got caught up in the book. What are you reading? She held it up. The Art of War. Seemed appropriate given your line of work. Finding it useful? Very. Sun Tzu would approve of how you handled the Santiago situation. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You were listening? The door was open. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I just heard. Lena set the book down. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Violence should be last resort, not first response. Easy to say when you're not in my position, maybe. But I've seen enough violence in hospitals to know it rarely solves anything. Just creates more trauma, more pain, more people needing care. She stood, started setting up their equipment. You're building something different than what you inherited, something that might actually last. They worked through the session, falling into familiar rhythms. But the atmosphere felt different, charged with something neither of them was acknowledging. When they finished, Lena packed her equipment slowly, clearly working up to saying something. Just say it, Adrian told her. I've been thinking about boundaries, professional boundaries. Adrian's stomach tightened. Okay. When you hired me, it was supposed to be strictly medical care. But it's become more than that. The dinners, the conversations, the way you look at me sometimes. She met his eyes. I need to know what this is. The question he'd been avoiding for weeks laid out directly. Adrian could deflect, could retreat into professional distance, could protect himself the way he always had. Or he could be honest. I don't know what it is, he said quietly. I just know that you're the only person in my life who sees me as human instead of useful, who makes me want to be better than I am, who makes this mansion feel less empty. Lena's expression softened. Adrian, let me finish. I'm not good at this, at being vulnerable or honest about feelings. I've spent 10 years building walls to keep people out, but you got past them somehow, and I don't want you to leave. I'm not leaving, I'm just asking what you want from me. Everything, Adrian admitted, which terrifies me because I don't know how to have everything without destroying it. Lena crossed the room, knelt beside his wheelchair so they were eye level. What if we just start with something simple? Dinner, actual dinner, not therapy session dinner. Just two people spending time together. A date, if you want to call it that. Adrian studied her face, this woman who'd stayed when everyone else wanted to run, who'd seen him at his absolute worst and still chose to be here. The risk was enormous. Getting close to him made her a target, put her in danger from his enemies. But sending her away for her own protection felt like surrendering the first good thing he'd had in years. Okay, he said. Dinner, tomorrow night. Tomorrow. Lena smiled, squeezed his hand gently, and left him alone with his fear and hope warring for dominance. The next evening, Adrian had Maria prepare the terrace overlooking the ocean. Simple but elegant, candles and good wine, and a meal that wasn't reheated leftovers eaten while working. He changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on casual slacks and a sweater. Marcus watched the preparation with barely concealed amusement. You're nervous, Marcus observed. I'm not nervous. You've changed clothes 3 times and checked your hair in every reflective surface. You're nervous. It's been a while since I did this. Did what? Acted like a human being instead of a crime boss? Marcus straightened Adrian's collar unnecessarily. Relax. She already likes you. This is just making it official. Lena arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple blue dress that Adrian had never seen before. She'd left her hair down, wore minimal makeup, looked nervous herself. You look beautiful, Adrian said. You look terrified, Lena replied, then smiled. But thank you. They ate on the terrace as the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in impossible colors. The conversation flowed easily, ranging from her school experiences to his business challenges, both of them carefully staying in safe territory. It was Lena who finally broke through the politeness. Can I ask you something about the accident? Adrian tensed. What about it? Do you ever wish it hadn't happened, that you could go back to before? Every day? But also... Adrian paused, thinking. The accident forced me to look at my life honestly, at what I'd built and what it cost. I'm not sure I would have done that otherwise. And what did you see? An empire built on fear and loneliness, successful by every metric except the ones that actually matter. He looked at her. I wouldn't have met you if it hadn't happened. So no, I don't wish it hadn't happened, just wish it had happened differently. Lena reached across the table, took his hand. I'm glad I met you, even though your world is terrifying and complicated, and sometimes I think I should run very far away. Why don't you? Because you're worth the complication. Because I see who you could be, who you're trying to be, and I want to be part of that. Adrian turned his hand over, laced his fingers through hers. I don't know how to do this. Relationships, emotional honesty, all of it. I'm probably going to mess it up. Probably. But I'm pretty stubborn. I'll stick around anyway. They stayed on the terrace, until the stars came out, talking and laughing and slowly building something neither of them had names for yet. When Lena finally left, Adrian sat alone in the dark, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next month passed in a blur of changes. Santiago's organization imploded from internal conflicts, exactly as Adrian had predicted. Without firing a shot, Adrian's strategic patience had eliminated a threat. Other families took note. The wheelchair-bound king was proving more dangerous than the walking one had been. But the real transformation was personal. Adrian and Lena fell into a relationship that was equal parts romance and partnership, navigating the complexity of his world together. She attended family events when appropriate, stayed carefully distant from business when necessary. His people accepted her presence with varying degrees of comfort, but they respected her because Adrian clearly did. Marcus pulled him aside one evening 6 weeks into the relationship. "You're different, happier." "Is that a problem?" "Not for me. But some of the old guard are nervous. They think she's softening you, making you weak." "Let them think it. Underestimating me has always been their mistake." Adrian watched Lena through the window, deep in conversation with Maria about something that had them both laughing. "She makes me better, Marcus. Stronger in ways that matter. I know, I'm just warning you that not everyone sees it that way." The warning proved prescient 2 weeks later when Rodriguez approached Adrian with information about a planned coup. Not from outside the organization, but from within. 3 of his oldest lieutenants, concerned that his relationship with Lena was compromising his judgment, planning to force him out. "When?" Adrian asked, his voice cold. "Next board meeting. They're going to call for a vote, try to install Chen as interim leader." The old rage flared, hot and familiar. These people he'd trusted, promoted, enriched, now turning against him because he dared to be happy. Part of him wanted to crush them immediately, make brutal examples. But that was the old thinking, the reactive violence that had defined his earlier reign. "Set up a meeting," Adrian said. "Just me and the 3 of them. Tomorrow." The meeting happened in the warehouse, neutral territory. The 3 lieutenants arrived looking confident, probably expecting Adrian to try negotiation or threats. Instead, he had documentation waiting. Financial records showing their own corruption, skimming profits for years. Enough evidence to justify immediate removal, or worse. "Gentlemen," Adrian began calmly, "you think I've gone soft because I'm happy. That loving someone makes me weak. But here's what you're missing. The old me was so busy being feared that I missed things, important things, like how you've been stealing from me." He slid the folders across the table. They opened them, faces draining of color. "I could end you for this," Adrian continued, "but I'm going to give you the same choice I gave my brother. Leave, tonight. Take what you've managed to hide and disappear, or stay and face consequences you won't enjoy." "You can't just," one started. "I can do whatever I want. This is my empire, built with my blood and strategy. You were useful once. Now you're liabilities." Adrian's voice went hard. "You have 2 hours to decide. Choose wisely." They chose to run. By morning, all 3 were gone, their positions filled by people who understood that Adrian's happiness didn't mean weakness. It meant he was finally thinking clearly. The incident should have been a warning to be more careful, to protect himself better. Instead, it convinced Adrian of the opposite. Life was too short and too uncertain to keep building walls. 3 months into their relationship, on a clear December evening, Adrian asked Lena to meet him at the cliff where his car had gone over. She arrived looking confused and concerned, clearly worried he was having some kind of breakdown. "Why are we here?" she asked. Adrian looked out at the ocean, at the rocks where he'd almost died. "This is where everything changed, where the old life ended and something new became possible." "Adrian, let me say this before I lose my nerve." He turned to face her fully. "I've spent my entire adult life believing that love was weakness, that caring about someone gave them power to destroy you. And I was right, technically. Loving you makes me vulnerable in ways I've never been before." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "But it also makes me stronger, braver, better. You saw me when I was broken and treated me like I still mattered. You've stayed through every complication and danger. You've made me want to build something worth having instead of just something worth fearing." "Where are you going with this?" Adrian pulled out a small box, opened it to reveal a simple ring. Not ostentatious, just a single diamond that caught the moonlight. I'm going somewhere I never thought I'd go. I'm asking you to marry me, to build a life with me that's more than just survival, to be my partner in everything." Lena stared at the ring, at him, tears streaming down her face now. "Your world is dangerous. Your enemies would target me. We'd have to be constantly careful." "I know, and I'm asking anyway because you're worth the risk, worth changing everything for." "You're sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back to safe distance." "I'm terrified," Adrian admitted, "but I'm also more sure of this than anything else in my life, so yes, I'm sure." Lena laughed through her tears, nodded. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." Adrian slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, pulled her close, kissed her with everything he'd been holding back for months. She tasted like tears and hope and the future he'd never let himself imagine. When they finally pulled apart, Lena was smiling wider than he'd ever seen. "Your people are going to lose their minds. Let them. I'm done living my life for other people's approval." The engagement announcement did cause chaos. Half the organization celebrated, the other half worried. Marcus just grinned and said he'd called it months ago. Victor sent an expensive bottle of vodka and a note that read, "About time." But the real challenge came from an unexpected source. Lucian. He showed up at the mansion 2 weeks before the wedding, thin and desperate looking. Marcus wanted to turn him away immediately, but Adrian had him brought to the library. His brother looked terrible, clothes worn, hair unkempt, eyes haunted. "I heard you're getting married," Lucian said. "Word travels. I also heard you've changed things, made the organization less violent, more strategic. That true?" "Why do you care?" Lucian sank into a chair, uninvited. "Because I've spent 6 months running, Adrian, hiding from the people you turned against me, trying to rebuild in places that don't want me. And I realized something." "What's that?" "I didn't want your empire. I wanted your respect, your acknowledgement that I mattered." Lucian looked at him directly. "I tried to kill you for attention. How pathetic is that?" Adrian studied his brother, seeing genuine regret for the first time. "What do you want, Lucian?" "Forgiveness, probably. But I know I don't deserve that. So I'll settle for you knowing I'm sorry for all of it. The break lines, the betrayal, Isabella. All of it. Isabella's married to someone else now. Heard she's miserable. Good. She deserves it." Lucian stood. "I'm leaving the country, going to Australia, starting over completely. But I wanted to see you first, tell you I was wrong. Adrian could have him killed, could have Marcus handle it quietly, eliminate the threat permanently. But looking at his broken brother, Adrian saw only a cautionary tale about what happened when you let jealousy consume you. You get one chance, Lucian, one life to build something worth having. Don't waste it trying to be me." Lucian nodded, understanding the dismissal and the mercy both. "Congratulations on the wedding. I hope she makes you happy." "She does." After Lucian left, Lena found Adrian in the library. "You let him go." "I did." "Why?" "Because revenge stops mattering when you have something better to focus on." Adrian pulled her into his lap, wrapped his arms around her. "He tried to kill me and failed. I survived, adapted, found you. That's victory enough." The wedding happened on a Saturday in January, small and private, just close friends and family. Not the massive political event Isabella's would have been, but something real and meaningful. Lena wore a simple white dress. Adrian wore his best suit. Victor gave her away since her own father was long gone. Marcus served as best man and spent the entire ceremony looking proud. When Adrian wheeled down the aisle to meet Lena at the altar, he felt none of the shame or frustration about the wheelchair he'd carried for months. It was just part of him now, part of his story, the thing that had broken him and rebuilt him stronger. They exchanged vows with shaking voices and steady hands, promising partnership and honesty, and the courage to keep building something good, even in a complicated world. When the officiant pronounced them married, Lena leaned down and kissed him like they were the only two people in existence. The reception was held at the mansion, good food and better company. Adrian's people mingled with Lena's nursing school friends, two worlds colliding more smoothly than he'd expected. He watched his wife, laughing with Maria, and felt something settle in his chest. This was what happiness looked like, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Late in the evening, Victor found him on the terrace. "You did good, Adrian. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it." This is history, you know. The great Adrian Varese, finally human. Victor sipped his vodka thoughtfully. Your father would be proud. My father would think I'd gone soft. Your father was good man trapped in bad business. He would understand that finding happiness in this world is victory, not weakness. After the guests left, Adrian and Lena sat on the terrace watching the ocean. She'd kicked off her heels, was leaning against him, completely relaxed. So now what? She asked. Now we build the life we want. You finish nursing school, become the incredible nurse I know you'll be. I run the empire, but differently, smarter. We figure it out together. Sounds perfect. Sounds terrifying, Lena laughed. Same thing. And maybe it was. Maybe perfect and terrifying were just two sides of the same coin. The price of actually living instead of just surviving. Adrian looked out at the cliff where his car had gone over, where he'd almost died, where the old life had ended. He thought that night was the worst thing that could happen to him, but it had led here, to this moment, to this woman beside him who'd stayed when she could have run. The greatest victory wasn't reclaiming his empire after the accident. It was discovering that power came in forms he'd never considered, in vulnerability and partnership and the courage to let someone matter more than control. Lena had seen him broken and chose to help him heal, had seen his world of violence and chose to stay anyway, had looked at the man inside the wheelchair and the criminal empire and decided he was worth loving. That was the real miracle. Not that he'd survived the crash, but that he'd survived what came after and built something worth surviving for. I love you, Adrian said quietly. I love you too. Lena squeezed his hand. And I'm not going anywhere. Under the stars, with the ocean crashing against the rocks below, Adrian Varese finally let himself believe in something more powerful than fear or control or revenge. He believed in second chances, in transformation, in the possibility that even people who'd spent years building walls could learn to tear them down. Most of all, he believed in the woman beside him, who'd shown him that the strongest thing he could do was let himself be human. The wheelchair that had seemed like the end of everything had actually been the beginning of understanding that real power wasn't about domination or fear. It was about choosing who you became after the world tried to break you. Adrian had chosen to become someone worthy of Lena's love, someone who led with strategy instead of violence, someone who understood that the greatest empire was the one you built in your own heart. And as they sat together in the darkness, planning the future they'd face as partners, Adrian realized something fundamental had changed. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of his enemies, not of his limitations, not of the vulnerability that came with loving someone completely. He was just alive. Fully, completely, messily alive, in a way he'd never let himself be before. That was the real victory. Not power or control or revenge, but the simple courage to be human in a world that rewarded cruelty. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.